So now let's talk. We've talked about so many different ideas about relationship. Let me wrap up with two principles that we really need to focus on. And that is, the number one principle is, what is the most important factor in creating an extraordinary relationship? Well, the very most important factor is having an extraordinary relationship with yourself. And that's one in which you relate to yourself, you express to yourself, you share these things, you demonstrate on a consistent basis, not just when you're done with this tape today and you do it for one day, but I mean, you really make it a habit. You schedule time with yourself. That's why the first tape and Get the Edge is the most important one. Because if you take that hour of power, or again, your 30 minutes to thrive, or as a minimum, your 15 minutes of fulfillment, the best time is first thing in the morning. Get up earlier, go to bed a little earlier, do whatever it takes. If you can't, then you got to do it at lunch, or you got to do it in the evening at an hour that can't move. It's like a meeting that can't be moved. Because in that hour, all the things we're talking about here have a chance to coalesce. You have time for yourself. We're so busy. We've got to have time for ourselves. But assuming that that principle is in alignment, that is, you already have a relationship with yourself, what is the most important factor in having a quality relationship with someone else? And the answer is selection. Selection. What do you mean selection? I'm already in a relationship. Oh, this whole portion of the tape is not going to relate to me. I've already made my mistake. No, you can't think that way or you're in big trouble. No, selection means selecting the qualities you need in a relationship. So if you're already in a relationship, then this is going to be something you're going to look at brand new. Let me give you an idea. Relationships go through many phases. They go through that initial, oh my God, I'm so attracted, can't believe it, I want to be connected with this person phase, hopefully. It goes through phases of this deep love, and it goes through phases of questioning. Like, what the heck am I doing here? This happens in all relationships. It's the nature of relationships. But what will make a relationship last is if both people share similar natures, or natures that complement each other. Now, what do I mean by nature? I don't mean they're attractive and you're not, so it works out. I don't mean they're busy and you're not, so there's a balance. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about knowing whether or not your relationship, your relatedness is based on the moment or whether it will have a lasting impact. And that's based upon beliefs, values, and goals. In fact, let me give it to you this way. If you want to hire someone for your job, now, you and I both know, again, if you talk to somebody who's really good, an example I can give you is Dick Vermeil. Here's one of the winningest coaches in history. He's the only coach to win both a Rose Bowl and a Super Bowl. He's an amazing man. And I was asking him after he won the Super Bowl, I said, what was the most important thing in you winning? He said, was clearly inspiring these men to give their all. I said, well, that's interesting. He said, motivation, people make fun of it, but it's the most important thing because you have all the same players. They're basically at the same level of skills any other team. It's the capacity to get more out of them, to be able to relate to them in a way where they bond with you, and as a result, you're able to move them to a different level of action. He said, but frankly, Tony, as powerful as motivation is, selection's even more important. He said, I got to tell you honestly, I would have been fired if I had not won this year. He said, the reason is because today in NFL football, he said, the coach is a marketing tool. If you haven't won for 3 years, you're out of here because the team needs to go to the public and say, we have a new coach. We have a new possible future now. He was the problem. Buy some box seats. He said, so the bottom line is you have no time to build a team. So in order to build that team, I had to select the right people. You had to select people whose nature would be to work together. I had to select people who would normally probably give more of themselves than anyone else would expect of them. He said that was the most important task that I went through. He said, by making that selection, we built a Super Bowl team in no time. He said, because we didn't look for individual players with just skills. We looked for players that could relate to each other and work as a team. Now, if it's true in NFL football to get a winning team, it's certainly true of creating a winning relationship. And I'll give you another example from business. When you're going to hire someone in business, there are 3 factors you really have to be able to answer to know whether or not this person is going to succeed long term. Because everybody succeeds in the beginning. It's like all relationships in the beginning virtually have enthusiasm and energy and excitement. It's sustainability that we're looking for. So in a business relationship, there are 3 questions you got to answer. Number 1, can they do the job? Can they? Well, the truth of the matter is if you're interviewing them, chances are they can do the job because you've probably screened them, right? I mean, you've probably gone through their bio, maybe checked some references, or you've had someone else look at things before they even brought in to take a look at you and have an interview with you. So the truth is when you're in a relationship with someone, you're considering a relationship with them, can they be your partner? The chances are that if you're at the level of consideration of that possibility, sure they can, more than likely. But the second question is more important. Will they do the job? I don't mean today, I don't mean tomorrow, I don't mean this week, I don't mean this month, I don't even mean for the next 6 months. Will they do the job 10 years from now? Will they do the job 3 years from now? Now, will this relationship last? Whether to do the job in business or not is based on two things. Number one, does the job meet their personal goals? See, if someone really wants to make $1 billion and the job they're in will never allow that, then you know darn well that however long they're here, it's not going to be long, because eventually their goals are going to take them somewhere else. If the job is really about mastering business skills and they want to be a singer, then eventually they're probably not going to be here. Or even if they stay, they won't do the job to the highest level of quality that's necessary. Because some people do stay in a relationship forever. They've been together for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they're friends. They don't have intimacy. They don't have a relationship called intimate relationship. They just have this good friendship. And so the same thing happens in businesses, doesn't it? You have somebody there that just kind of hangs on. They don't really grow. They don't really expand. They kind of do the job, but do they do it to the maximum capacity? Absolutely not. The second criterion for whether somebody will do the job is, does the job reinforce their nature? Now, think about this from business, and then we'll relate it to your personal relationships. See, if a person is very much a people person and you stick them back in accounting, they may be able to do the job. Yes, they can. But will they do the job long term at the highest level of quality? The answer is no, because they want to be with people. Their nature is to connect. And being isolated in accounting is not what's going to make them feel fulfilled. So sooner or later, they're either going to quit, find another job, i.e. another relationship, or they're just going to hang out there and do the minimum that they absolutely have to and find joy outside the relationship called work. Well, this is also true in your personal relationships. Listen, if you have somebody whose goals are radically different than your own, they want to have kids and you don't, this is a pretty important element. If you can't resolve those goals where both parties are really happy, then you're going to find there's going to be continuous conflict in this relationship, resistance, resentment, and eventually, if you stay together, repression if you don't end the relationship. Secondly, if you are in a position where you're the kind of person that never acknowledges someone, that's just not your nature. You're not much into acknowledgement. You expect, well, people know. I know. You don't have to tell me. Why should I have to tell you? And the person you're a partner with craves acknowledgement. They need to be told how much they're loved all the time. They need to be shown all the time. And you're not that kind of person. You never have been. You can try and get yourself to do that for a while, but your nature says as soon as the person looks satisfied, as soon as the pressure's off, you're going to go back to your old style. And so that person will not be reinforced in this relationship. And someone else is going to come by and stroke them and tell them how great they are and how amazing they are. And guess what? They're going to find a great attraction, a great love, a great appreciation for that person, which you will eventually notice or feel or just sense that there's a loss for you. And so what's happening is you're two great people, but you have radically different natures. Does this make sense? Now, this is not to say you can't make any relationship work, because of course you can. But when your nature is different than the person you're with, that doesn't mean you're not attracted. People who are totally opposite natures can be totally attracted, but they don't usually have sustainability. That's one of those hot love affairs. Yeah, woo, bam, bam, yum. And then, ooh, what happened? How come I'm not there anymore? What happened? What? You're not the same person I met, 6 months ago, or 6 weeks ago, 6 hours ago, right? Everything's changed because the natures are different. Does this make sense? I hope it does. Well, the third question you got to ask when you're hiring someone, you go, boy, Tony, thanks a lot. I'm hiring a lover? Is that what you're saying here? That's what this whole tape's about? How to do a job interview? Well, sort of. Because selection's the most important part. You make the right selection where you find someone who can do the job of loving you and loves that job and will do it because you got the same goals and similar natures or complementary natures. You don't have to be identical, obviously, but natures that support one another. Then the third question is this the right team fit? And team fit comes down to things like values. Now, again, nothing has to be identical because if everything's identical, you'd be bored. But it has to be complementary. If your goal is to make a difference in the world and change lives and contribute to society, and your partner, who is the sexiest thing on the planet, who is a total hunk or hunkette, who is the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, who you worship the ground they walk on, but their major set of values in life are to arrive at the top and step on as many bodies as necessary to get there, then I got news for you. I don't care how beautiful they are. I don't care how many other things you share in common. Your values are so radically different that you're going to be in conflicts on a regular basis. And when you're in conflicts on a regular basis, then a relationship is hard to sustain. Because it's hard to relate to someone. That's what a relationship is. It's hard to form a ship of relations, right? If such a word were to be true. Now, be on this ship called life. Go through life with this person on the ship of your relationship if you don't really relate to what you both value most. If you don't really relate to what they value most, they don't relate to what you value most, you're going to have conflicts. Now, don't get me wrong. Some diversity is necessary. But the things you value at the highest level, if these things aren't in common, you're going to not only have conflicts, you're going to have drama and pain, a kind of pain that doesn't go away. Because when people's nature, when they value things so differently, they're going to always have challenges, or they're going to have to repress what they really feel. And neither one is going to make your relationship better or make you healthy or happy. Besides values, another part of team fit is sensuality or sexuality. Because what you value in your sensuality is also extremely important in an intimate relationship. And unless you address that, you got some real challenges. And you know what's interesting is that very often in a relationship, we try to make our partner be a certain way, don't we? You know, you try to well, I'll fix my partner. Well, they don't want to be fixed because this is their nature. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not broken. They just don't meet your values. And so you got to be careful about that, because if you're successful, you'll take the spirit out of your partner. And if you fail, you'll be frustrated with your partner because after all, they haven't changed. Neither one works. You got to get a partner who is already aligned at a nature level with you. That's not to say everything is perfectly in alignment, but the most important things have to start there if you're going to have a winning team. Does that make sense? And I'll tell you, on the sensuality side, we all have male and female energy. There are some women that are very male in their energy, some very feminine in their energy. There are men that are very feminine in their energy and some that are very male. We all have both energies in our body. But one of the things that happens in intimate relationships is very often people start to become more like their partner, like they both become very feminine or both become very masculine. You know, a man wants the woman to be responsible, and he works so hard to make sure she's responsible, not so emotional, and so she doesn't want to get beat up, so she does that. And then she loses all her femininity and her flow and her creativity and all the stuff that attracted him in the first place. And all of a sudden they lose the physical passion. They're now good friends, they're good business partners, but they don't have the passion. Or vice versa, a woman saying, you know, God, he's such a pain in the rear. You know, when can I get him to just loosen up and be free and be a sensitive male? And then he's so sensitive, she's, man, I can't get him to do anything. He just hangs around and wants to hug and kiss me. I love that for a while, but when's he going to go out and make something of himself? You know, I got to pump him back up again. And this also happens the opposite. Sometimes there are women that are very masculine. They attract a feminine man, and they have this tremendous sexual energy. Because you got to remember that sensuality, that sexuality comes from polarity. Just like the earth, you got different poles, and those different poles create that intense energy of attraction. If you become the same, then there's no spark. There's no electricity. And so when you're looking at team fit here, you got to say, okay, does their nature, in terms of their sensuality, create sparks with me, or do I have somebody that's going to quickly become a best friend? But the reason I mentioned it to you, there's a particular gentleman who's really written some outstanding books, and we got him to do a course that's on intimacy, sensuality, and it helps you to take a little test to find out where are you and where is your partner, and how do you bridge that. And his name is David Deida, D-E-I-D-A, and I highly recommend him, so you might want to check that out.
This session continues on the next CD.
But let's do one thing right now, because in a few moments we're going to talk about the most important principle in creating a relationship. But before we even do that, I want you to turn off this program in a second. Just turn it off for a moment. And when you do, I want you to write down a game plan of what you're going to do so that you really love yourself. And I don't want you to hear the story of, oh, I can't love myself, I never love myself, it's not a perfect. Forget all the stories. The only thing keeping you from getting what you deserve and what you want is your story about why you can't do it. So put the story aside. Give yourself this gift. If you were going to really cherish yourself, if you were going to really let yourself know you really love yourself, what would your action plan be? And by the way, how important is it for you to feel that you love yourself? I mean, if you don't, can you really love anybody else really 100%? Do you really think you have the ability to give if you don't have that love for yourself? And let me tell you the good news. You do have that love for yourself, otherwise you wouldn't be alive. You would have taken your life, you'd be gone. So don't say, I don't love myself. That's just something you may have said over and over again. Let's just be more demonstrative. So I want you to create an action plan. What are you going to do? You say, I'm going to take 2 minutes in the morning for the next 7 days. I'm going to do this stupid thing Robbins said. No one will know. I'm going to look in the mirror and I'm going to say a little incantation over it. I'm going to look at myself and go, I love you. I love you. And you say your name, look right in your eyes. I love you. Let me tell you what I love about you. I love your commitment to people. I love your caring heart. And say your name. So I'd say, Tony, I love your caring heart. I love your commitment to people. Tony, I love your playfulness. I love that you're off the wall. I love that you're willing to do whatever it takes to help people. I love that you're so committed to be strong physically and healthy. I love your love for God. I love, and you look in your own eyes. Because then it's not just saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. It's giving real reasons. It's like when you give someone a compliment in a relationship, little tip, don't just say, you're great, you're awesome. That wears off real quick because people think, you're just blowing smoke. But if you can say, you know what's really great about you? Or you know what I love about you? I have to tell you, I noticed this and this and this. I created a relationship, when I first went to work with the San Antonio Spurs. I had a bit of a challenge because at the time I first went to work for them, they had a guy on the team named Dennis Rodman. So getting in a relationship with Dennis Rodman when you're a white guy and you're taking his free time and making him sit for 3 hours in a seminar is sometimes a bit challenging. But the way I got it with him was with sincere compliments. I had brought a group of kids down the night before as part of my payment to train these guys at the Spurs was to take kids on mentoring and for the Spurs to meet them and maybe give them autographs. Dennis was the only one after the game that stood around and signed autographs from everyone else, and I noticed it. And so when I got up, I said, Dennis, I know you're outrageous. I know you're crazy. I know you're one of the best players in the league. I know a lot of people get upset with you, and I know there are things that they probably have a right to be upset, but I got to tell you something I really respect about you. You were such a class act. You're the only person last night, and I'm not telling other people they're wrong, but you're the only person that made sure every one of those kids got attention. That was the coolest thing, and I just want to thank you. And I didn't wait for him to notice. I just went on. And a couple of times it is, and you should have seen him, even Dennis Rodman, sprout up, who'd been like, putting his glasses on. He tore the notebook up I had, threw it on the piece of paper on the ground, and stood there with his arms folded. But saw the arms unfold because we all want to be loved. We all want to be significant. Now, we don't want bull. We don't want somebody to lie to us. We don't want fake things, but a sincere compliment gets us. So how about starting with yourself? Because if you can give to yourself, you'll be able to give to other people. So that's one thing. That's one assignment. In fact, if you did nothing else on this tape, I'm going to ask you to do that for the next 7 days. That you take 2 minutes and you sincerely compliment yourself each morning and look directly in the mirror. You go, yeah, but what if my spouse or somebody else is around and they see this stuff? Inspire them. Make it playful. Have fun with it. But I'd like you to do right now is turn off the tape, and I want you to write what else besides that will you do that'll get you to feel that love. Because if you have that love already, you're not going to have a fear of losing it. And when you don't have the fear of losing your primary fear, when that primary fear is gone because you know you can't ever be not enough because you're enough for yourself, you can't ever lose the love because you're giving it to yourself, or you've connected with God and you know that's everlasting love, whatever works, then you don't have to react in relationship when someone says something that makes you feel like, well, maybe they don't think I'm significant, or they act like they may not be there for you, may not love you. You don't have to overreact. And when you're no longer overreacting, the quality of your relationships transforms. Does this make sense to you? Then turn this tape off now and write a list of at least 10 things you're going to do to teach yourself, to learn, to appreciate, to acknowledge what a great human being you are and how much you love yourself. Please take the time to do that right now. Turn off the tape. Okay, welcome back. I hope you took the time to really do this. If you didn't, please stop the tape and go back and do this, because you can't love anybody else. Really give love to them if you haven't loved yourself first. And we all know that intellectually, but when you begin to do things for yourself that demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that you love yourself, all of a sudden you're not in a place of scarcity. And see, when you're in scarcity, it's really hard to attract somebody who's full, because, like attracts like. When you feel full of love, you can't believe all of a sudden there's this abundance. It's like in life, when you're barely surviving financially, no one will help you. And when suddenly you're rich, everybody gives you stuff for free. And you go, no, I want to pay for it. No, we don't want to pay for it. Man, when I was starving, they wouldn't give me a meal. Now everybody wants to pay for my meal, take me someplace, give me something, tickets, fly here, do there. It's bizarre. But it's a law of life. Water seeks its own level. Like attracts like. So you must become in your soul, in your feeling, in your emotions, that which you want. And if you do that, it's easy. It flows. It's natural. Now, what were the things you put down? And what were the patterns? Did you notice any of them? Were some of the patterns things you would do for yourself as a demonstration that you loved yourself? Were they auditory things you said to yourself? Were they things you did that caused you to be around other people that would love you? These need to be primary patterns people have. For example, the people here in the studio, by the way, if you're ever in one of these studios when I'm doing one of these tapes, you become one of my laboratory subjects, like a guinea pig. But seriously, the people here had a couple of interesting things. One young lady said that she used to, years ago, have this great pattern, which she kept journals, usually about 4 or 5 times a week. But at the end of her journal, she would always write who I love and who I want to send loving blessings to. And then she would always end it by saying, I love you, her name is Pamela, I love you, Pamela, XOXO, every single time. And she said the act of writing that down every single time, blessing herself and making sure she loved herself anchored it in her body so real, and she hadn't done it for a long time, and she misses that feeling. Another example she gave is she just recently created a collage where she cut out a phrase that said, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways." And then she's been adding to that list, and she said the great thing is every time I write down another thing I love about myself, she's that page in my planner, I read all the other ones again. And so it stacks the emotion of all the reasons I love myself, which, by the way, is really great. Because this isn't just, I love you, or you're great. Remember, when you give someone a great compliment, you want to be as specific as possible. Well, that's true of yourself as well. Another thing that she does that we do in our seminars is we have people at the end of some of our intensive programs. Like if you go to our Life Mastery program, it's 9 days of total immersion that we do in Hawaii, that we do once a year. And then people come back 6 months later to do a program, usually in Palm Springs or Florida, and then they do another program after that 6 months later on Wealth Mastery. And they can do that anywhere in the world. So we get to see people through time. And what we do is at the peak of their emotion, when they made these great changes in their life, and they're in the best physical shape they've ever been in, the best emotional state, and they know they're on target financially, in those moments, we then have to stop and say, now give yourself real wealth. Write yourself this love letter. Write as if it was God was coming through your hand, as if you had no filters about being appropriate. As if, I can brag about my son or daughter, and I mean it. I can talk about how great they are and how much I love them, how special and unique they are, and there's no hesitancy. So write about yourself the way your parents could write about you or God would write about you. And so you have people write this, but the best part is we seal it, and then we send it to them 6 months later when you're in another state, another thought, another place. And it's very emotional. I personally wrote a letter like this to myself almost 10 years ago, and I picked up an old book from my library, and there was the letter, and they're unopened. And I opened the thing up, and I read it, and I cried. It was just so emotional. It anchored me back to that place. So these are all great demonstrative ways. Another thing she said she's going to do is she said, every morning she spends so much time working on her hair in front of the mirror. And she goes, that's a great time to look in your own eyes and send love to yourself, or kind of flirt with yourself, say, hey, you're pretty hot, that kind of thing. And while it sounds silly, it creates a playful state with yourself. And lastly, she said, working out. Whenever she works out consistently, she feels so good about herself that she feels like she's really giving to herself. And it's ironic that most of us don't work out because we think, I don't have the time, or, that'll make me stressed out. The truth is, not working out creates 10 times more stress. That's why that hour of power is so important. Another person here said that what they really do is they kind of pull the covers up around their friends when they want to feel loved. And that metaphor for this man means that if he's feeling kind of down or lonely or sad, instead of just sitting there by himself, he calls 2 or 3 friends and he doesn't even tell them he's feeling sad. He just talks to them about their lives and what's going on. And the warmth that they feel for him, the love and the friendship they share, just instantaneously transforms him. And he feels that love, even if they don't have an explicit conversation about that. It's a great strategy. Because so many people say they feel alone, but they don't reach out. I was in a prison recently, and I was there with a man who's been locked up since 1951. And we have programs in prison systems all across the country. In fact, recently, talk about impact of relationships, we had a study that was done, a follow-up study, that showed the recidivism rate has decreased massively in a variety of prisons, and it's being published by the Journal of Prisons. But the point is, I went back to see a group of these men, and one of them, if you can imagine being in jail since 1951, I mean, he was just a boy. We hadn't been to the moon, no color TVs, computers, didn't exist unless they were the biggest, buildings. I mean, it's a very different world, and he's been locked up all this time, and he hadn't had one communication from anyone in more than 17 years. And after I worked with him, I said, this is ridiculous, you're isolating yourself. And so a month later, he wrote me a letter, and he said, I've already had 17 letters from people who we've reached out and communicated with, and he's so happy. He felt so excited, and it inspired him. One relationship led to another, and pretty soon he said, you know what, I'm changing my identity. I'm not a con. Even though I've got 12 more years in here, he said, I feel more free today than I've ever felt my entire life. And he said, I decided somebody on the outside, the difference between them and a con is that they own real estate. So he decided to use his relationships to negotiate an incredible deal on a small piece of raw land that was dirt cheap, literally dirt cheap. And now he's a real estate owner. He's not a convict. He feels so different about his life. But all this came from putting himself in a new circle, a new place in which he felt valued, he felt loved, he felt appreciated. But you got to go first. We all want people to come to us. You got to initiate first. So this is a great strategy. Another person here used their hour of power. They said they take an hour in the morning just to meditate and be, to walk around. Another man here said that he'd love to get up in the morning and just take a little time before anybody else wakes up, have his coffee, and send some emails to friends who he never really finds time to talk to. But he feels like he can connect with them then. He can wake up the next morning and see their responses and have that sense of connection, even though the time zones they're on are so different. Another simple thing to do is just to go places you love. You know, one of the men here said that if he would just in the middle of the day, instead of sitting at his desk and having lunch there, he'd be so much more productive if he really just took that hour and went away and went to a nice place. He loves going to the gas lamp district. He loves the idea of going to the ocean, you know, going to the pier, because those are places that nurture him. And you come back and there's so much more of you to give to your work and to your environment. We live in an age where most of us are trying to be so efficient that we lost the emotion that makes us effective. And that emotion comes from having a great relationship with ourselves, where we feel nurtured by ourselves. And, you know, sometimes you got to do things like just hug yourself, as silly and stupid as that may sound. You know, really touching yourself. I mean, you got to think about what would you do for someone else, though? You give them a hug. You pat them on the back. One of the things I'll do sometimes is, you know, I'll do something on stage or I'll do something off and I do something I just know is extraordinary. And I'll reach back and pat myself on the back and smile and, you know, kind of make fun of it. But I'm like, yeah, that was awesome. I don't give a darn if anybody else notices. I noticed. That was kick butt. Because part of the challenge in life is that most of us are not busy looking around to acknowledge other people. So if you don't acknowledge yourself sincerely for doing things that are unique or special or just being loving, you're not going to feel that feeling that you deserve. And the more you give these feelings of love to yourself, the more whole you'll be, the more centered you'll be, the better person you'll be in a relationship. You'll have something to give instead of going there to get. And you know what? You'll be more selective. You say, okay, Tony, well, you've helped me to understand where conflicts might come from, but what's the solution? Good question. The solution first is an awareness and appreciation of what this is all about. When things start to happen in a relationship, you got to first take a look and say, okay, right now if I'm starting to react, what's really triggering this is fear. When people say, I'm stressed about this, stress is a code word for fear. And the fear that's the deepest is if you don't achieve this, if they don't do this, if they don't respond that way, if they don't like this, if they don't respect this, if this doesn't happen, then you're not enough and you won't be loved and therefore you will die. This is the basis. So the way you make your relationships work is you first create a great relationship with yourself. You first got to learn to love yourself. Because if you're going to a relationship to get that instead of to give that love, then you're going to be with two people that are starving trying to take each other's food. And, you know, that's the definition of hell, right? All that you're looking for is inside you. So the way you create relatedness is you start with you. And the way you start with you is you got to say to yourself, what do I love about myself? What is worth loving within myself? And you got to create an action plan, as I said earlier, that can allow you to start to feel that. And the way to do that is to ask a simple question. If I want someone to feel totally loved by me, what would I do? What would I do? Because actions speak louder than words, right? Well, you might say, I'd tell them I love them, and I'd say it in a certain tone of voice. When's the last time you looked in your own eyes in the mirror and said, I love you? I mean, really looked and said it and meant it. People go, I can't go on doing that stuff, staring in the mirror. I'm done with these tapes. You're getting a little over the edge, boy. No, when's the last time you really did that? You know, for that matter, when's the last time you looked into someone else's eyes who you're around all the time and stopped and just focused and said, I love you through your eyes and face, not just with the words? We all know we can't give to other people what we haven't given to ourselves. There's nothing to give. You can't go in empty and expect to fill somebody else up. And you sure as heck can't go to a relationship always empty and expect that that person's going to feel good about being related to you. They're going to feel like you're a taker, not a giver. So fill yourself up. What else would you do if you wanted someone to know you love them? You might do things for them. You might take some special time for them. What are you going to do for yourself? What special time could you take for yourself? What else would you do if you really, really adored somebody? What else would you do? You might tell other people how great they are. You go, well, can I tell other people how great I am? Yeah, you can if you do it elegantly. You absolutely can. As long as you do it with a little smile on your face and go, oh, I'm pretty good. Can I tell you what I did? Because I want to hear what you did. I'm just learning to acknowledge myself. You know what? If you do it and you're not full of yourself, you're just acknowledging the truth, it inspires other people. But if you do it and you try to pretend like you're not doing, go, yeah, well, let me tell you what else I've accomplished. That's not connecting with yourself, and so you can't connect with anybody else, and you're just seen as a blowhard. Well, there are other words to use, but they're a little more graphic, and I think I'll avoid them at this time. You know what I mean, right? You got to connect with yourself. So before we do anything else, I've talked about so many things here. Maybe you want to take some notes and jot down a couple of these principles, and maybe you say, okay, all right, one of the things he's talked about so far is when I get upset, I need to ask myself, what's really happening here? Am I responding to my past or the present? I need to ask myself, what else could this mean? I'm just going to do that for the next 3 days or the next week. I'm going to do that all day long in any upset I have. That might be a nice thing to do. Because if I was doing this as a tape program, honestly, I do a whole library and we break it down. So maybe you want to start with that. But right now, and there's a bunch of things we've done here. Why am I in this relationship? To magnify my emotion. Now, Are these the emotions I want to magnify is the question? No. Very good. For me to feel this way, I have to give it a meaning. What's the meaning I'm giving this? Well, what else could it mean? You know, Tony said the principle. It's not about me. If they're doing this stuff and they're coming at me, it's because they need significance. They're screaming for significance, or they just need some love. It's not about me. They're not trying to hurt me. They're just trying to meet their own needs. So we've talked about a lot already, haven't we? If I'm really in a position where I'm really, really upset with somebody, you know, is it something I'm upset with myself about? Asking quality questions gets you quality answers, what gets you a quality life. But here's what really creates the stress. All human beings share the same fears. The primary fears of all human beings are the following. Number one, that we're not enough, and number two, that we won't be loved. And let me explain to you why. I've kind of started into this on one of the earlier tapes. I don't know if you recall, but let me give you a little reminder. Every human being who's ever been to therapy knows that something happened at some stage of their life that made them feel like they're not significant or they may not be loved, and they live with that fear forever. You don't need to go to a therapist. Let me just tell you. You've got lots of those experiences. And the reason is because human beings have something rather unique in their makeup. It has to do with the way in which we're raised. In the animal kingdom, most animals are not dependent upon another animal, whether it be a mother, father, brother, or sister. They're not totally dependent upon another animal for a long period of time. If you're a bird, you're kicked out of the nest in a few days or a few weeks. If you're a snake, you know, you're a turtle, you're dropped off and you fend for yourself in the first moment. There's nobody around. You got to step up, right? But if you're a human being, you're one of the few creatures on Earth, like primates, that's one of the other creatures like this, that have a long period of time in which your survival revolves around a total dependency upon another human being putting your needs ahead of their own. See, as human beings, we weren't born with some special venom or special incisor teeth or claws. Our evolutionary advantage is our ability to relate to each other, to share, and through that to share ideas, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and produce an extraordinary advantage in life. That's why we as a species have flourished. But you know what? Leave us alone, and how do we do? If a baby is left alone, it dies. A human baby. Why? They get something called failure to thrive syndrome. If a baby is not stroked, isn't physically loved, isn't given, as the doctors say, tactile stimulation, also known as love, then the baby has failure to thrive syndrome. They can't explain it. The baby dies. Love is a need that is so deep within us. It is a survival instinct, and without it, we die. That's how important it is. But here's what's unique about human beings. That makes your mother, and hopefully your father, but not always fathers, always mothers, have to love you if they're biochemically healthy. The reason is all women, when they're pregnant, have something called oxytocin that flows in their body. And what this hormone does is it makes this mom have to love the child even when the child is butt ugly, right? Immediately, this child who looks like a lizard is the most attractive thing on the face of the earth. Now, what's interesting, he's got all this fat around him. It's the last time someone will say you're cute when you got fat around you. He burps, and it's wonderful. He throws up, it's okay, baby, we love you. Right? Doesn't matter what you do. You are loved. And guess what? It's a good thing. Because all you got to do is make a little noise and everybody jumps to meet your needs. I mean, anything you needed, it was going to show up. When's the last time you felt that way about your life? Right? So what happened was your survival depended upon it. Now, some fathers do leave in various cultures of the world because they don't have oxytocin. Most fathers, the connection, the sense that their life is more significant than themselves, that there's this being that's been brought in the world through them, causes them to be connected. But that's an emotional, spiritual thing. It's not necessarily biochemical. That's why women, if they're healthy, just don't leave. And here's what's interesting. As I said earlier, there's a point when this oxytocin leaves. When that stuff wears off, ooh, the stuff hits the fan, doesn't it? Suddenly, the same stuff you used to do, you get a swat for, or a harsh word, or ignored. You know, suddenly there's all these rules that have to happen before you get love, which is your substance of survival. Think about it. You have to do something significant now. Before you don't have to do anything, not just you have to act a certain way, good or bad. If you don't get attention for doing good things as a child, you'll do bad things. And by the way, adults are just big children, so that you have the same patterns at some level. And so what happens is you learn. And by the way, how long is this dependency for most people? It's not like other animals. It's not a few weeks. It's not a few months. It's 5, 10, 15, 20, these days 35 years of total dependency before somebody finally gets it. So we live in a world where we become connection freaks because we know if someone doesn't care for us, if we're not significant enough, if we can't generate enough love, we're not going to survive. So while you may remember having gone to your therapist this one time when your father or mother said something, or another child said something, or somebody dumped you, or they didn't give you the love you deserve, and that's why today you have this inferiority thing. That's why today you have this fear of not being enough. That's why you don't feel love. That's why you can't be intimate. Bull. It's because you're human. All of us have it. Some of us indulge in it. Some of us live there. Other people discipline it and say, when that comes up, hey, here's the truth. I can love myself. Here's the truth. I love my Creator. My Creator loves me. Here's the truth. This problem is not a problem. I just need to reconnect with this person. But you got to understand that this creates a situation in most intimate relationships of pain. Because the minute someone looks like they aren't loving you, or they're not treating you as significant enough, the fear of the loss of love, the fear that you're going to die emotionally comes up. And what most people do when that fear shows up is they try to get out first. They either try to hurt the other person, because they figure if they can hurt them, they'll be in a position where they won't feel so bad. They take their fear and they push it out. Or they hurt themselves. They go inside and get depressed, feeling like there's nothing they can do and their world's going to end. Or they distract themselves through drugs or alcohol or television or overworking, something else that'll make them feel good in the moment so they don't have to worry about the fact that maybe they feel insignificant. Or they find a big problem and they say, I really would be significant. I really would be worthy of love. That's what they're saying unconsciously, except this thing happened. If it wasn't for this thing, I'd be okay. See, still love me. I have a significant problem. I'll love you. Some people get that love by just giving love to other people even when the person physically abuses them, because they're so afraid of losing the feeling that they're significant or loved. At least if I'm being beat, at least as I'm getting attention, maybe there's still a chance for love. Or the achiever's approach. If I make enough money, if I accomplish enough, if I achieve enough, then people will notice I'm important and eventually I'll feel loved. Maybe I'll get the love. It is the basis of the psyche of human beings. So now, since most of us have no clue what's driving us, we have no clue what beliefs and rules are controlling us, and we've modeled most of this as a mismatch of experience that we never really thought through consciously. We've never been through a date with destiny type of program where we help people to find what they want, how they want it, what the rules need to be to achieve what they want and rewire themselves. Most people have no training whatsoever on what's driving them as a human being. They don't know why they do what they do. They just got these things that they do, and they don't understand it. They're in reaction. They're just trying to get the job done. And you put two of these people together, and you wonder why we have a situation where there's so much pain out there. Take into account also you have people, two types of people, males and females, who biochemically are different and therefore think differently. Some males are more feminine in their energy. Some males are more male in their energy. Same thing with women. But those energies have a different focus. Masculine energy is about achieving, completing, breaking through, experiencing freedom. And feminine energy is about connection and love. And we both have both energies in our body. The question is, which one do you develop the most? And they're so different that they by themselves create conflicts. So if relationships are so important, why don't we always magnify our emotions? Well, we do. The only question is which emotions. If you get in a relationship with somebody whose primary psychology, their primary emotions they experience on a regular basis are fear and rage and worry and frustration and jealousy and envy, and you get in a relationship with that person and you have a lot of dominant negative emotions, let me tell you what's going to happen. Two people with negative emotions are going to magnify their negative emotions. Now, if your predominant emotions are positive, if they're love and excitement and passion and compassion and honor, right? If it's peace, if it's centeredness, and you're with somebody else, you will augment each other. You'll magnify those good feelings. And most people are not so extreme that they're just one or the other, are they? So for most people, their relationship is the place of their greatest pleasures and their deepest pains. The secret, the real secret to relationship is this. You got to understand a relationship is a place you go to give, not a place you go to get. See, as long as you're going to a relationship trying to figure out what you can get out of it, then what you really have is a transaction, not a relationship. You're trying to figure out I gave this percentage. I gave 50%. They got to get 50%. When you start measuring how much you give in a relationship, the relationship's over. You now have a transaction, right? Because a relationship is about unlimited sharing. A relationship is about unlimited giving. And when you share at that level, you magnify all that's good. But when it becomes about who's done what, when a relationship is driven by rules and not by love, a relationship begins to die. Everybody needs certain rules in order to feel comfortable, to meet their values. But the more rules you have, the more pain you have in a relationship. I remember seeing years ago on CNN, they did this little story about the Gerber food people, and they were shooting a commercial. And the commercial had, if I remember right, like 5 families that had quintuplets. And it was really interesting because they were different ages. Most of them were babies, but there was this one guy whose kids were, I don't know, the quintuplets I think at this stage were probably 4 or 5 years old. And he was maybe 30 years old, but he looked like he was 50. And he was already balding, and he looked really beat up. And I remember the interviewer going up to him and saying, "What do you have? What can you tell us about what you've learned by having 5 kids simultaneously?" He looked in the camera and he said, "Don't have too many rules." And the interviewer said, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "With 5 kids, if you have too many rules, they're always breaking something, and you're always in reaction. You should have the least amount of rules possible in order to raise these kids." And I thought that's so true in life. Most upsets are because people have so many ways that people can be upset. So many things that can make things go off kilter. If we know the purpose of relationship is to magnify, we got to decide to magnify only the good. And we will still screw up. But if we make a conscious decision that our relationships are really about magnifying the good in the person we love, and it's a place we're going to give, then we're going to receive tenfold. It's the law of life that we all know. So the question then is, why doesn't that happen? And the answer is because we get hooked. We get triggered by things that have happened in our past, as we've already described, and part of that has to do with the nature of human beings. I mentioned earlier on one of our tapes that everybody has the same needs. Everybody. I don't care where you come from in the world. I've had the privilege now of traveling literally and working with people from more than 75 nations. I've worked with 2.5 million people over the last 23 years. I've seen every kind of relationship you can imagine. Worked with just about every kind of person you can imagine. And during that time, I've been able to see that people have the same needs. They have different goals, different values, different rules, but the same needs. We all need certainty, remember? We need that feeling that we can be comfortable, that we can avoid pain, we can gain pleasure. We all have a need for variety, for uncertainty, for surprise, right? For challenge. It's what makes our lives exciting and juicy. We all have a need to feel significant, to feel important, to feel unique, to feel special, to feel like we're needed. Everybody has that need. The only question you have is how you go about meeting it. Do you demand it, or do you give it? Or do you just notice it's there and appreciate it within yourself? Everybody has a need to connect and to feel love. Everybody has that. Everybody has a need to grow, as we've already said, and to contribute. Those 6 needs must be met by all human beings. But here's what's interesting. We don't all pursue these needs the same way. Some people try to meet all their needs by doing it just through their job. And so they have no real intimate relationships because all their focus is about how to be significant by achieving. And connection is kind of a secondary thing that eventually they'll get to. And these people usually end up unbelievably unhappy later in life, if not already. Some people think everything is about relationship, just my one single love relationship. But then if that relationship gets in trouble, they have no life. So if you spend any time with me in coaching in any of their tape programs, I'll walk you through these needs in more detail. For now, just know that relationships are about meeting each other's needs. If you can help your partner in life to feel certain that by being in a relationship with you, they're going to feel comfort, they're going to feel joy, they're going to feel love. If you can help them experience more variety by being in a relationship with you, cool surprises, learning, growing, challenge, stimulation. If you can help that partner to feel totally special and unique, and you mean it, where you really value them, and you see the unique qualities they have. Everybody's got unique challenges, but they're unique qualities. And you appreciate them and you acknowledge them so the person feels it. If you can really connect on a regular basis, if you can relate, if you can share, if you can get them to share, if you can cause by your association, by your relatedness, both of you to grow and contribute, then you will be in a relationship that is legendary. But if your relationship is one in which you want out, it's because many of these are missing. You don't feel important to that person. You don't feel significant. You don't feel special. You don't feel unique. You don't feel like you matter. That's the first thing that starts to break it down. You don't feel connection because they won't share something. You want them to share, but they won't share. Or there's dishonesty, which shuts down any kind of connection. Or you feel bored. There's no variety. We keep doing the same things. There's no growth. There's no contribution. Right? Or you're in a position where you're not certain. At any moment, they could leave you. These things create stress in a relationship. So let's take a moment now and let's answer a really important question. What's the purpose of a relationship? Any relationship. Is there a universal purpose? Is there a universal reason? I mean, so often in life, we want things, but we forget what we want them for. I mean, have you ever said, I want a relationship? And then you got one and you thought to yourself, I don't want a relationship, right? Because you thought what you wanted was a relationship, but what you really wanted was something else. Maybe it was intimacy. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was sensuality. Maybe it was a connection of spirit. Maybe it was someone that would tease you, provide variety. Maybe it was a challenge. But what happens for most of us is we don't know what we're after. And so then we get disappointed when we don't achieve what we don't even know we want. See, you got to get clear. What's the real purpose of a relationship, of all relationships? Some people say, well, to communicate. Other people say, well, to learn, to share, to know, to understand, to experience things. All those answers are accurate, but the real purpose of a relationship, the purpose that feeds out of all the things we just described, is one simple thing. The purpose of a relationship is to magnify the human experience. Now, what do we mean by this? Well, think about it. How does it feel when you experience something on your own? It can be phenomenal. But why do you want to share that? Because in the sharing, not only do you get to experience it again, but there's a magnification, isn't there? I mean, when that other person gets excited, it gets you even more excited. Or when they get sad, you get even more sad. When there's that emotion that's shared, there's that synergy, there's that power. Where 1 + 1 doesn't just equal 2, there's a third power. There's something visceral, there's something ethereal that occurs when this connection happens between people and they share their emotion, their feelings, not just their ideas. See, it magnifies our experience of life. That's why we search for it. I mean, would you like to go to the ballpark for a sporting event with 4 people there or 100,000? You might say 4, I get a better seat. But I'm talking about from the feeling. When that person hits the ball and 3 people go, yay, woo, yay. Not quite the same as when you're in the middle of the Super Bowl or you're in the middle of the final game of the World Series or the middle of the NBA championship and Jordan steals the ball and everybody jumps to their feet and you hear the room screaming and shaking and every part of your body is vibrating and he scores and you go nuts. And the city goes nuts. Why don't we all just go off and say, see you guys later, and then go, yeah, by ourselves later on? Because there's not as much power in that. The power is in the sharing. That's the power. Relationship is about sharing. And the quality of your relationships is in direct relationship to the amount. Well, that sounds interesting. The power of your direct relationship. But that's true. So I'm going to continue. The quality of your relationships is in direct proportion to the amount of yourself that you're able to share with someone. That's how you're able to relate. It's sharing. And the amount of that person's emotion and feeling and spirit that you're able to share with them. In other words, you got to listen. You got to hear them. You got to feel them. You got to experience them. It can't just be you doing a data dump to somebody else. That might feel good for a while, but it won't last. Community comes from relationship. I mean, if you look at the web, and people go on the web, and if it's a place you can go and just get stuff, that's nice. But it becomes a community when you know it's a place you can go give things. When both are happening, the give and take, when you can pitch and catch, now you got something because now there's a growth, there's an expansion, there's a magnification, there is life. That's what relationship's about. So if you're in a relationship and you're not able to share, you're not really in a relationship. If you're not able to care about someone else's sharing, you're not in a relationship, right? Or you're in a low-level relationship. Obviously different levels of quality, but not an extraordinary one, not the kind of one that a person who gets a program called Get the Edge wants to be in. And we talk about get the edge here. We talk about get the edge over someone in a relationship. If you have something over somebody, you're no longer in a sharing mode. You're in a controlling mode. That isn't a related state. That's not a relationship, right? When we're relating together and we're moving in a direction like that ship, we're related, moving the ship forward, right? We're experiencing that joy, and we're experiencing the happiness, and we're experiencing the pain, and we're experiencing the learning. We're experiencing all of those human elements, all of those elements of the spirit. So we've got to do this. And I'll tell you, this is true just about anywhere. I was working the other day with Lou Pearlman. This guy's an amazing guy. I don't know if you know who he is, but he created all these boy bands like NSYNC, if you're familiar with them, and the Backstreet Boys. They sold more records in 1 week than any album in history. And he manufactured these groups, literally. He saw what people in our society relate to most. What's the music that moves them, that connects them? And what kind of people do they connect to most? And he put together a formula. But more importantly, he brought these kids together and put them in a house and lived with them and trained them not only how to sing and dance, but how to relate together, how to create harmony. He says the secret to these groups is 5-part harmony. There's a level of emotion and intensity that comes when you put these 5 voices together, different distinct voices, and they unify and they relate, that's able to move the spirit of people around the world. Even people think, it's manufactured, that music's predictable. Still moves people more than anybody else. He's brilliant. So he asked me to come down because they formed a new group. It's an all-male band called O-Town. So he asked me if I'd come down and work with these kids and help them to integrate all of their best abilities. And when I went down there, I had this conversation with these young men, and I said, listen, Every one of you as an individual has achieved an immense amount just to get here. But you're never going to get where you want to go unless you learn to relate as one. The power is in the unity. The power is in your relatedness. And we gave them so many examples, and they really got it. And then what I did is I did a bunch of exercises, and I had them produce some emotion. I said, I want you to create some energy, create some excitement in your body. And they looked at me like, what do I do? And then they began to do things physically with their body. And I said, double the intensity, triple the intensity. I said, take it to the next level. Come on, whatever it takes. You know what they all did? They all got up and started high-fiving each other. They all started looking at each other, pointing at each other, interacting with each other, and doing it in unison. I didn't say do anything together. In order to get that higher level, we have to share. That's why when people talk about things like, oh, you know, the internet's going to isolate the world, keep us separate, most people are using the internet to connect. Or people say people never go to movies or concerts. I mean, it's totally absurd, because even if we connect online, we want the visceral experience of being together. There's a certain amount of relatedness that comes from physical proximity with people. So what I'm trying to say to you is, if you want the most out of your life, if you want an extraordinary life, the edge comes in extraordinary emotion, extraordinary psychology, and that comes in your capacity to share with quality people at a deep level of relatedness on an ongoing basis that expands your ability to enjoy your life. Some of that relatedness will cause you to find a way to grow like you've never grown before, because someone can find a way to move your spirit and challenge you, and you can do the same for them. Some of it's going to create pain that makes you have to look at your life, which will make you grow. Some of it will give you the sense of contribution you've always been looking for. Some will stimulate you and give you variety. Some will add certainty to your life. All the human needs can be met in this way. Now, you can meet these needs by yourself, but never at the same level of intensity. You have the potential to, but you won't. You want to change your life? You need to ask yourself a new question whenever you're about to get upset with any person in any relationship. And the question is this: what else could this mean? What else could this mean? It'll change your life if you ask it. Because what happens is when you're upset because, not because of what someone did, not because of what they said, but because of the meaning you've attached to it. You say, well, they said this, therefore it means that. So you got to ask yourself, what else could this mean? And you got to make yourself come up with as many positive meanings as you come up with negative. Let's say, for example, someone promised to do something and then they don't show up. And you go berserk. I can't believe this. They don't care. Look at this. They left me stranded. Once again, you know, every time I go to count on, they're not there. Now, you've come up with 3 or 4 negative meanings. That they're not there because they don't care, because they always do this, because they're irresponsible. Now, when you start stacking negative meanings, you're going to go into a state that will make being in relationship with you an adventure, right? Something that will be quite difficult. In fact, in this state, how will you treat this person you're in a relationship with? You'll probably treat them in a way that will make them not want to be in relationship with you. If not leaving the relationship permanently, in the moment they're not going to want to relate to you. And so you'll lose the juice. Does this make sense? So instead, what you got to be able to do is come to that relationship with an open new set of possibilities. Because the truth is, most people when they screw up would beat themselves up more than you beat them up anyway. So why beat them up and push them away? You're supposed to be their lover, their friend, their manager, their associate, their partner, their mentor, their father, their mother, their son, their daughter, whatever relationship you have. Why not cultivate them? That doesn't mean you have to accept bad behavior, but the way you do it is you don't assume ever that the person has done something deliberately to harm you. When people do things, it's rarely, if ever, about you. Usually you're not that significant. They're trying to meet their own needs. They're trying to deal with their own fears, their own frustrations. You just happen to get in the way. And that's true for you and I as much as anybody else. So you got to remember, it's not about you most of the time. Even if someone's upset, they're usually upset about something from their past. They're upset about something they feel frustrated about internally. And if they're frustrated with you, it's only because they have the illusion that you're preventing them from being able to experience something they need, some certainty or some significance or some love or something they think they need. So get real and know that it's not about you. And then ask yourself, what else could this mean? Well, maybe they're not here, and you got to come up with powering meanings, not more negatives like, well, it could mean that they're really a jerk. No, that's not the way you do it. You say, what else could this mean? Well, maybe they've been in a car accident. Maybe there's something else that's happening that's critical to the quality of their life. Maybe they're actually doing something for me. Maybe I didn't make it absolutely clear that I need them to be here at this minute. Maybe I overloaded them with too many requests. If you come up with enough other meanings that are empowering, you'll finally get yourself into balance. And when you do communicate, 2 things will happen. 1, you'll be elegant. You won't assume the worst, which really hurts people. When you assume the worst, even if you're right, you injure people in relationship. And when you injure a person you're in a relationship with, you injure yourself. Because you injure the relationship, and that's something you share together. It's like so many people in a relationship, things aren't going well, and the first thing you do, what do? They attack. Now, the problem is you're attacking your teammate. You're attacking your shipmate. We're on this spaceship called Earth together, and half the people are trying to blow up half of their own ship. It doesn't work. Relationship is about unity. It's about how do we help each other move next level, not how do we punish each other. The biggest challenge you'll find in relationships is people would rather be right than be in love. And you got to ask yourself, what else could this mean? You know, do I want to be right? Do I want to be in love? Do I want to learn? Do I care about this person? Let me focus. So I've kind of gone off on this tangent, but I'll tell you why. Because if you want great relationships, you've got to become a master of meaning, and you've got to find empowering meanings. In fact, even if you're wrong and you assume the best from people, they're going to appreciate that. And pretty soon, that expectation becomes something they want to meet. Rarely do people respond from negative reinforcement, but consistently people respond to pleasurable reinforcement. For example, if you wanted your spouse to call you every night at 6 p.m. when they're on the road, and one night they don't call, and then when they finally do call, you tear into them. What have you taught them? You've taught them calling you equals pain. You say, no, I'm teaching them not calling me equals pain. No, they wanted to call you. They called you on their own. Now's the time to give them reinforcement. I saw this happen with my daughter with her boyfriend. It's like she wanted him to call, and he got busy, and he didn't call. And when he finally called, she would just tear into him. After about 6 weeks of this, he wouldn't call at all, and the next thing you know, the relationship's over. Negative reinforcement is not your goal. So how I got off on this tangent is, if you're in a relationship and you want out of it, don't respond from the past, don't assume the worst, find an empowering meaning, and then if you still see that this is not meeting your needs, and we'll describe how to decipher that in this tape, then obviously you need to take action. The third perspective is you may be in a relationship and you may just be immobilized. You may be just have given up. You may be in repression. You don't want out. You don't want more. You just kind of accepted the fact that this relationship just is. And that's probably the worst place to be, because you know what? Pain and pleasure at least will move you. You know, if you're in a rut, you're in trouble. I hope a wagon's coming down your rut, because it'll get you moving. Because to have a life, you got to have some movement. So if we're talking about relationship, the first thing I want you to think about is, let's say intimate relationship, where are you? Are you in a relationship or not? And what's your perspective? Right? Do you want a relationship? Do you not want a relationship? Do you want more from the one you're in? Do you want out of it? Are you immobilized? Because we need to know where you start. Now, the next question I have for you is, okay, where do you really, really want to be? What would your ideal relationship look like? And I'm going to guide you through a process on this tape to have you actually describe that in detail. But I want you to begin to think about that even now for a moment. I mean, if you could have it any way you want it, what would your intimate relationship be like? What would you guys talk about? What would you laugh about? What would you share? What would you learn together? What would you grow? What would you contribute to each other? How would you make love? What would be the magic times that you'd share? How would you surprise each other? You know, most of us are so busy with all the demands of our lives that we don't take time on the things that are most important. Most people's lives are not working because they're more focused on, the to-dos on their list than the relationships that matter. See, at the end of the day, when I'm teaching someone how to manage their life, I don't just have them look at their to-dos. I say, what did I achieve today? But the next question I ask them is, who were you today? In terms of your relationships. Like I'll say, today I didn't get all these other things done, but I was an extraordinary father today because I spent such great time with my daughter, Jolie. We did these cool things, and they weren't what I intended to do initially, but it's the most important thing to me. And all of a sudden the day is a victory. Life is relationship. And the quality of your life is directly related to the kinds of relationships that you create and you expand and nurture throughout your life. But it's easy to get off track and get caught up in the doing, isn't it? Guess who? Yes, I'm back. Welcome to day 3. This is your buddy, Tony Robbins, here to coach you to the next level. Listen, congratulations on continuing the program. I'm really impressed. Today, I want to talk to you about what I think may be one of the most important, if not the most important areas of your life. An area of your life that, when it's handled, can give you the greatest amount of joy and love and ecstasy that you've ever imagined, and probably is most of the peaks of your life have some aspect of this in your life. And then, of course, if it's handled ineffectively, this is the place of pain. This is the place where people really feel themselves devastated. This is the place where life seems to lose its meaning. So the area we're going to talk about, of course, is that vehicle of life, that thing we focus on called relationship. And if you handle it well, my God, I mean, when you're in love, when you feel that connection, when you feel that bond, when you feel that sense of oneness with somebody, what's that like? I mean, what can really compete with it? Making money might be nice, achieving something's wonderful, but if you do it alone, it's worthless. If you don't have someone to share that joy with, what's it like? At the same time, being upset with yourself is one thing, but when you got someone else to be upset with, boy, you can really do a number, can't you? You can really get yourself upset. You can really get yourself wired. You can make yourself feel massively inferior or massively superior, angry, upset, frustrated, hurt, devastated, right? You can do just about anything to yourself you want with this vehicle called relationship. And I call it a vehicle because we forget that relationship is a way of relating. That it's a process. It's not a fixed thing in time, that it's always changing, it's always moving. In fact, one of the challenges we have as human beings is we all want to get things done. We want to have the whole thing done. We want to get all that financial stuff handled so we never have to work again. Of course, if you never worked again, you'd be totally unfulfilled. And I can tell you that because I had the privilege at a very young age to achieve that. I don't have to work anymore. But everyone I know who never has to work again usually works harder. They're just doing what they love now. Their focus is on doing things because they want to, not because they have to. But most of us think we want to reach this level where we can just stop. When you stop, you begin to die. I mean, there are two laws of life, and they're so fundamental, and they're true of everything, and they're certainly true of relationship. And that is everything in life must grow, because if it doesn't grow, it what? It dies. And that's true of a relationship. That's true of your body. That's true of your mind. That's true of a plant. That's true of anything in the universe. You grow or you die. When you're green, you grow. When you're ripe, you rot. When you start thinking it's over, it is over. So you can't look for a fixed time when all of a sudden your finances, your body, your relationships are done. It's never done. Your body is a constant challenge to constantly improve and strengthen and make powerful and passionate so you can live life at the highest level and have that edge we're talking about. Have that extraordinary quality of life. And the same thing is true of a relationship. Most of us have got so many things going. We want our relationship to just be handled. But if it was just handled, you wouldn't have to grow. You wouldn't have to expand. You wouldn't have what you deserve in your life. You wouldn't have that little bit of resistance when you need it. And you wouldn't have that comfort when you needed the reinforcement. And most importantly, you wouldn't have love. You wouldn't have the deepest level of love, the level that you're able to share, whether it be with your creator or with your children or with your lover or your best friend. I mean, that's what relationship's all about. The second law of the universe is you must contribute. Because if you don't find a way to contribute in meaningful ways, you're eliminated. That's a law of life. That's a law of the universe. Anything that doesn't contribute eventually is eliminated by evolution, if not by something else. So in our lives, for you and I to feel fulfilled, we've got to grow, we've got to contribute. And we've got to contribute in a way that we feel has some kind of meaning. If we don't do that, it doesn't matter how much someone else loves us, we won't be happy with ourselves. So a relationship is a place that we go to sculpt our souls, to sculpt our spirit, to sculpt our emotion, and to enjoy life to the fullest. And when it's handled properly, it is the most incredible joy, pleasure, excitement possible. And when it's handled poorly, oh boy, is it pain, isn't it? I know you've been both places. I sure have. So the secret is we need to look at three things. First, let's talk about how do you create an extraordinary relationship. An extraordinary relationship, not a good one, not an excellent one that's really outstanding. Now, I don't care whether you're starting from scratch or you have one you're already in and you want to create it or recreate it, rejuvenate it into an extraordinary relationship. The principles are basically the same. The second thing we want to talk about is how do you deal with the inevitable challenges that show up in any relationship. They're going to be there because when you got people who have different values, different ways of looking at life, different rules, you're going to have conflicts. It's a matter of time. And no matter how much you love somebody, it's going to show up at times. Some conflicts are small, some are huge. That has more to do with the personalities and the rules and the values of the people involved. And then thirdly, how do you nurture and expand this relationship geometrically? How do you make sure that that growth factor is absolutely there? You not just create a relationship, but you keep expanding it so that that fulfillment is a spiral that moves up as opposed to entropy showing up, which shows up in most things, doesn't it? Things begin to just naturally break down. If you aren't moving forward, it's moving backwards. That's just gravity. It's the way life works. So now, if we're going to do this, you might start by saying, well, where are you now? Because we've talked each day about this concept of having the ability to close the gap. I mean, how do you create an extraordinary life? You close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. The secret to closing the gap is first be honest with yourself that there is one. In almost any area of life, there's a gap. If you're healthy, because a healthy person is always looking to make it better. They may love where they are, but they want more. More love, more connection, more intimacy, more spirit, more playtime. someone who's going to listen more, feel more, want to give more. We all want more if we're healthy and growing and expanding. It's the nature of a quality life. So where's the gap in your relationship is going to be the first question we're going to really look at here. So maybe we should start by saying, where are you now? I mean, there's really only two positions people are in, right? You're either in a relationship right now or you're not in one. Now, if we're talking about intimate relationship as an example. So if you're not in a relationship, there's really two perspectives. Either A, you want one, but you don't have one. And the question is, if that's true, why? And the answer I can tell you right now. If you really want a relationship and you don't have one, it's simply because you have mixed emotions about what a relationship will mean. You want a relationship because you know what I mean, love and connection and intimacy, but on the other hand, you don't want a relationship at some level because you know, oh my God, I don't have the time, the energy, I've had fights and frustrated, I don't want to feel like a failure, I don't want to have the thing not work out, I don't want to have somebody disappoint me again. So the truth is, if you're not in a relationship, there's one reason. It's not a must to be in a relationship. As I said on the first tape, it's probably a must for you not to get hurt. And if you're going to be in a relationship, let me tell you the good news up front, you're going to get hurt. But at the same time, you're going to probably hurt other people without meaning to. That's part of the nature of life. You can't have joy without having pain sometimes. Everything in life has its reciprocal. You can't only have one dimension of life. It's like saying, I want the rainbow but no storm. I mean, it's part of life. And what you learn to do, those that have an extraordinary life, are people that learn to enjoy the storm as much as the rainbow, have learned to find the value in the storm, the beauty in the storm. I mean, that's when all that rain comes down that some people are upset about, the plants are gobbling it up and loving it. Sometimes you got to be a plant. Sometimes you got to be a seagull. You got to change perspectives. So if you're not in a relationship, either A, you want one, and we've described what's there, or B, you don't want one. And you're clear about that. In which case, it's obvious what the problem is. You've associated so much pain to a relationship that even your natural drive for connection is being shunted. And the sad part about this is, eventually, this creates even more pain than if you're in a relationship, for sure. Because we all have a deep emotional, spiritual, psychological need to connect at the deepest level. We have a need for this intimacy. It's not something we want. It's something we have to have. So we'll have to deal with those negative associations. And not we. You will have to deal with it, actually. I would just like to help, right? And you got to do it sooner or later, and you probably wouldn't be listening to this tape unless you really were ready. The second position you could be in is you're in a relationship, and then there's three perspectives. Either A, you want more from it, which, by the way, would be natural no matter how great the relationship is. B, you want out of it. That's the other side, the other extreme, but you're not quite sure how to navigate it, or you can't, or why aren't you out of it? If you want more, that's natural. If you want out of it, it's because you associate a lot of pain to it. If you're not out of it, though, it's because you associate pain to leaving. You see, relationship is all about emotional association. It's not about the real thing. We don't really respond to life anymore. We respond to what we associate to life. Somebody said something, and then we decide what that means. That means they don't care, they don't love me, they don't... And we go off on a tangent because most of us are not responding to what's happening in the moment. We're responding to our past. And when someone does something that resembles pain from our past, boy, we run quick. Not only do we run, but we often tend to fire off the old feeling and pretend that's what's happening now. One of the secrets to a great relationship is learning that this is not that. That the person you're with right now in this moment deserves to have a fresh slate, and you deserve to have a fresh slate with them. Because what really messes up a relationship is walking in with all these wounds. It's like if I took your arm right now and I rubbed my hand across your forearms back and forth like this, and just rubbed it, for most people that wouldn't hurt at all. But if you got a big scab there that's really, really wounded, and it's not even fully covered, and I come back with a little cat hair and touch it, you're going to jump out of your skin. And you're going to go, you know what, this relationship is horrible. No, it's not the relationship. It's the condition you're bringing to the relationship. And the condition is you're bringing the past. So one of the things that you want to look at is if you are in a position like this where you are pushing away a relationship, or you're in a relationship that you want to get out of, one of the things to look at is, are you making this person into someone else? Are you responding to them as if they're your mother or your father or your brother or that horrible person that you would have done anything to get out of a relationship with, but you stayed there too long? Are you, out of your fear, magnifying the situation? Are you adding a meaning that really isn't accurate? If you master the meanings of your life and you don't make things more than they are, relationship becomes much more delightful. Because what happens for most of us is we make things bigger than they are. In fact, almost all stress comes from making things more important than they really are. This means... No, it doesn't mean this. It's kind of like the story about Sigmund Freud. You know, one of the big conventions that he held to teach all these other psychoanalysts the process that he was teaching through Freudian psychology, he's sitting in the back, and while another speaker is speaking, he's smoking a big stogie, a big cigar. And many of these therapists are looking back and staring, and they get fixated. And you can see some of them become visibly upset because they're thinking, listen, this is the guy that teaches about oral fixation. He's sitting here sucking on a cigar. And so most people would never dare say anything. And when Freud got up, I mean, he's a very powerful man, and he begins to speak. And when they finally get the questions and answers, this one man could not hold himself back. He raised his hand, young man stood up, and he said, Dr. Freud, he said, would you mind explaining to us how you, sir, the man who's describing the problems of oral fixation, could be sitting back in the back of this very room smoking a big cigar, sucking on a cigar, sir? And Freud was very calm. He looked at the young man. He pulled out a new cigar. He lit it up, put it in his mouth, took a big puff, blew it out, and said, Sir, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. You know, sometimes we make up stuff. You did this, therefore it means that. No, sometimes these things have no relationship whatsoever. And learning how to ask yourself a new question can change your life. So I'll go right into a principle before I do anything else, because as long as we're talking about it, let's hit it. If you're a person, though, who is single, you're not in a relationship, then you have to create an action plan too, right? You got to say, how am I going to attract this person to my life? Well, you need a marketing plan. That's what you need, right? You can't just sit around and hope they're going to show up. You've got to go in the environments where you're most likely to meet the kind of person who's going to live the way you live, value what you value. I remember myself when I first started dating at 39 years old, I thought, this is different than 23. You know, I'm a different guy. Suddenly I was going out with people, and I was meeting people in restaurants and places like that, and boy, that seemed like a disaster because I met people who knew I was Tony Robbins and it was a significance thing for them to date me. Or they thought, wow, this guy could provide some great security. If you know the 6 human needs, that's called certainty. Or somebody said, this guy's a nut. I'll have lots of variety with him. But what I was looking for was a love. And not only a love, somebody whose heart and soul is about contribution, because that's what my whole life is about. And so I began to think, I don't want to see anybody in my seminars because they'll know who I am. But truthfully, the people that spent the time, the energy, the effort, the money, all those things that it takes to break through and grow, it was a great environment to meet people, but it was a bit of a conflict for me. So I'd meet people in a seminar, but rarely would I date them. And one day I met my wife. Little did I know, because I had my list, right? And let me tell you something about all this list stuff I told you about. Don't judge the list too quick. Remember I told you that? Because here's what happened. I was about to begin a 9-day seminar I conduct, and I wanted to see what my body was like at that stage. There's a process you can go through to evaluate your body's state where they take your blood, your live blood, and analyze it. And as I walked down the blood room, and there were literally hundreds of people in this room, people were shaking my hand and so forth, I looked up and I met eye contact with a woman. I could not break it. I didn't look at her. I just walked straight across the room, looked in her eyes and said, you are so beautiful. I mean, inside beautiful. I don't know what it was. It was something. I got her soul. Now, this was not necessarily on my list. My list didn't say catch eye contact and connect with the soul. Now, knowing it now, that's a pretty great strategy, but that wasn't what I was after. And I went up to her and I said, what's your name? And she said, Sage. I said, Sage, you're an amazing person. I mean, you are a spiritual person, aren't you? I can just feel it. She said, yes. And that was it. And I thought, okay, it was nice meeting you. And somebody saw us and said, let's take a picture, you two. And they took a photograph of the first moment we were ever together, which I cherish to this day. And then I left, and I thought, I didn't feel an attraction to her. I felt a connection to her. And on my list was certainly to have a great sense of chemistry, and frankly, there wasn't. Now, looking back on it now, I think I'm nuts. She's a beautiful lady, not only inside, outside as well. But I couldn't let go of this feeling. So I talked to her again, and over the next few months, I'd call her on the phone, we'd have a chat, and she was like my buddy. And I would, tell her about all my other dates, because my view was she was too quiet. She was too gentle. I mean, I thought, I'll break this person. I'm too intense. I'm go, 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 go. She'd never keep up with this stuff. Little did I know. So I'd call her up and talk about these dates and why were women this way, and she would coach me a little bit. And over 6 months, we became best friends. And then, of course, didn't want to date your best friend. That could ruin it. But finally we did. And as time went by, I found myself on about my 4th date with her, and I pulled out my list. Now, you got to bear in mind that I've been reading this list like every day when I finally made the change in my life for about a month or two. And then I'd look at it once a week, and after a while, every month or two, I'd read my list just to remind my brain what I'm really after and who I've got to be to attract that kind of person. And I was reading the list, and she was across from me, and I said, you got to read this. And I read every single thing on the list that I wanted in my life in a relationship, and there was no exaggeration, no hyperbole. I mean, she could read it. It was all her. The spirituality, the emotion, the contribution, the playfulness, the outrageousness, the sexiness, the fun, the laughter. Somebody who I could pitch and catch with, who I didn't just tell them ideas, they told me ideas. There was this great stimulation of conversations. I mean, we'd be up almost every night till 5 in the morning talking. And this many years later, we still do this. We make each other crazy because we have such a great time. We're so stimulated by each other because we're so similar, and yet we have our own point of view, which is so wonderful. But here's the best part. When I read the list of all the things I didn't want, because you remember, if you get everything you want in a relationship, you get 2 or 3 things that you just must not have in your life, they destroy everything else. And of course, we always rationalize that, oh, I'll work that out, or I'll fix them. You're not going to fix somebody's nature. It's who they are. It's not your job to make such a judgment anyway. And there was nothing on the list of what I must not have in my life that she was. Now, that's pretty rare. I don't know too many people that have been blessed as much as I am that they get everything on their list. But I got to tell you, as time went by, I found out she was not quiet, right? I discovered that. She was outrageous and playful, but she was just entering the relationship. So if you judge too soon, you'll start saying, well, this person isn't something. They haven't had time to be around you enough to get comfortable and share everything that they are. Give a relationship time to develop. Don't make judgments too quick, or you may miss out on your soulmate. By the way, I found out there were things that weren't even on my list that I liked. This girl's nutty. She's crazy. She's outrageous. She's weird. I didn't know I wanted these things. Now, how could I not notice I'd want weird when I'm so darn weird? But you miss some things on your list. Sometimes you get more than you ask for. Sometimes God just blesses you. And with my wife, Sage, that's absolutely what's happened. She's the greatest gift in my life. So there's a reason why I have 2 CDs here, or these 2 audio tapes. It's because this, I believe, is the most important area in your life. I can remember having a day where I made $400 million in a day, taking my company public, and yet within a few weeks I was really unhappy because that didn't really change my life. But one morning with my lady is more juicy than all the money, all the accolades, all the achievement. I mean, I remember at one time in my life thinking, okay, I've got 18,000 people here. I'm doing this seminar. We're rocking. It's like a concert for 8 hours. All these people want to hug me and give me all this love, and I'm a love monster. How could any relationship compare to that? But I got to tell you, the contrast of that I thought would be impossible to compare. Time with my lady, honestly, is more valuable to me, more juicy for me than even that. The ultimate love is that one-on-one love. And you deserve to have it, or you deserve to recreate it, or you deserve to take it to another level. So I'll give you the most important principle in marketing yourself. Number 1, you got to live by that list. You got to be that person you describe that will attract the kind of person you want. That's the most important thing. You got to love yourself so you have so much emotion and happiness inside yourself that you'll attract others. But also, thirdly, you got to understand the principle that proximity is power. Proximity means that if you put yourself in the right environment, your probability of creating a connection goes up 100-fold. I mean, if you go, I keep attracting the wrong kind of people, and I ask people like that, well, where do you meet people? Well, bars. Say, well, there's nothing wrong with a bar, but you're going to have a certain kind of person. You say you want a very spiritual, conscious person who doesn't drink alcohol and is very, very responsible. They may not be at the bar. There may not be a large number of them at the bar every Tuesday night. Maybe Fridays, but I don't know, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. I don't know. You got to think about that yourself. You have to decide, where is an environment where I'm most likely to find the kind of person that I described I really am committed to having in my life? And you got to put yourself in that environment on a regular basis. Is it going to the museums, as corny as that thing sounds, or the concerts? Is it, in a working environment? Is it at your church? Where would you go on an ongoing basis and expose yourself to a large number of people where you're going to be in proximity of people who share your kinds of values, share your kinds of goals, share your kinds of interests, so that you become connected to someone who already is more likely to be aligned with who you are? Because you're not going to find them just walking down the street. I mean, you could, but it's rare. And if you at least know what you want, you got a better chance. But you got to understand it's proximity. And very often, the basis of relationship for people is proximity. I mean, I can tell you, for example, my own company, I can't tell you how many people came to work in our company and then become married. The number of couples is staggering because they're in this environment, they're sharing the same kinds of values. We're on a mission, we're changing lives, they have fun, they have great values, we're aligned. Boom! Next thing you know, there's attraction. Next thing you know, the relationship. Next thing you know, they're married. You look at Elizabeth Taylor. I mean, the last person she married was a guy that was a truck driver, if I remember correctly. And if that's true, you go, where would she meet a truck driver? Well, they were in rehab together. Obviously, that relationship didn't last, but they were in proximity. They were close to each other, sharing emotions, sharing common experience, common goals. How the heck do I turn my body around, right? But that was a transition time. Sometimes the goals that you share with somebody are for a period of time as opposed to lifelong goals. And so for a period of time, you have a tremendous relationship, but eventually that relationship's going to end because you don't have the same things in common to be able to relate to. That's what relationship is, something to relate to emotionally, with passion, with feeling, with intensity. Now, by the way, I'll tell you one more thing. When you're making your action plan here and you're already in a relationship, here's what you do. Make a list of magic moments. Absolutely sit down and just say, what are all the greatest things I've ever shared with this person I love? Little things, when we laugh one day because we both fell off the ladder while we're painting, I don't know. This first time we met, when you said this and I said that. That smile the very first time. Last week when this happened. But see, what I love to do is, in any part of my life, is I make a list of magic moments. And if you'll do this in your relationship, you're going to find something magical happens. If you're always stacking, you're capturing the moments that are juicy and beautiful and wonderful, little ones and big ones. You're going to keep anchoring in that same feeling you had as when you first met them. You were dreaming that they might like you enough to give you a kiss or to visit with you or spend time with you. But if you don't stack those magic moments, if you don't look for the little things, the few challenging things blind you to all the little good things. And then life is all the little things. It's not just the one or two big things that make or break you. So you got to say, what are the magic moments? If you can ask yourself all day long, how did I get so lucky to get this person in my life? If you keep asking quality questions, what's magical about this person? What's special? What's unique? What do I love about this person? If you'll do that on a daily basis during your hour of power, I'll tell you what's going to happen. Your relationship will soar. It'll soar. And because you love them so much, they'll do it. And if you share with it, and if together you say, let's make a list of the magic moments we shared in the last month. And if you don't come up with a lot, that's a clue. And I'll tell you one more rule for making a relationship outstanding. Make sure that at least once, a minimum, absolute minimum, every 10 days you do something by yourselves together. Something. A lunch, a dinner, a trip, something. And ideally, once every 3 to 6 months, you've got to go away together for a multiple number of days. Because you've got to get yourself out of the environment. It's like one of my friends, Ken Blanchard, told me long ago just about friendships, that level of relationship. He said, if you really want to have lifelong friends, Tony, he said, what you got to do is break bread together for more than a meal. Go away for a week. Spend a week together. Go to Mexico. Go to Fiji. Go do something for a week. Because when you wake up and fall asleep and you're with that person day after day doing something that's fun, it bonds you for life. And I've done that now 3 or 4 times a year with my friends for God only knows how long. And I can tell you, I have such a deep level of friendship with my closest friends, and it's always expanding because there is no replacement for time. You've got to lock in the time. So lock in the magic moments, which is any moment you're with this person that you love, and share them with each other. That acknowledgement of what's magical enhances the relationship. And at the same time, make certain along the way that you're spending time. So at least 3 times this month. That's got to be your minimum must. You never let it go by. You must never not have at least 3 times in that month where you do something special with each other. And again, ideally, every quarter doing something where you get away. One of the biggest reasons people won't do things, won't stay in a relationship, won't nurture each other is, again, because they don't have goals that are aligned. But hey, this is something that's easy to align if people have similar values. But if you don't take any time to talk to your partner and say, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to experience? And you don't try and find a way to help them to achieve it, you're going to tend to drift apart. So what's really important here is at least once a year. I mean, at New Year's, maybe you recap that week, the year before, all of your magic moments, everything you guys can remember that was beautiful together, laughter you shared, something you saw, some silly, dumb thing that happened, you guys made it through it, all the magic that you shared, things with your kids, things with your family. And you capture that. Maybe write down some of the great achievements or decisions that you've accomplished. But then you set up the next year to win. You say, listen, what are the most important goals we have? What do we want to share? What do we want to see? What do we want to do? Right? What do we want to accomplish? And then you say, and when will we do this? Okay, we're going to do this in June. We're going to do this in August. So you lay a specific time. And then maybe on your anniversary, you do a nice recap of where you are so far in that year. Minimum, you got to do this twice a year. And this will move you together instead of apart. These are the ways to make a relationship grow and expand. So you got to figure out what's going to be your game plan. So here's your action item. If you're in a relationship, decide, What are you going to do now? What does your partner deserve? What do they need? What should you be giving them and you're not giving them? And write down an action plan, a massive action plan, a map of what you're going to do. Write down some simple things you can do today. When you're done with this tape, you're going to pick up the phone and do something. You're going to stop and buy a card. You're going to call them and organize something. You're going to arrange for a dinner. Something you can do to enhance it immediately. You're going to set down time to look into their eyes and tell them how much you love them and really express it. Whatever it is. Secondly, what do you need that person to do for you? What are some small things? If there was one thing that they did it for you, it would totally enhance the relationship. If they just make this change, so you could share it with them. But you don't want to share it with them until you've given to them first. Hear me on this. First, give them everything so they're thrilled out of their mind. And then say, you know, honey, there's this one thing that if I know it seems unreasonable, but if you could change this just a little bit, it would be so great. I wouldn't feel the sense of resistance that I was feeling. Because the way you combat those 4 R's is you communicate honestly. You either get over it and say, you know what, I'm being a jerk, this doesn't matter, or it does matter, and you communicate it in a way that doesn't make them wrong, in a way that enrolls them in wanting to make the change because you first figured out what they need. Because I guarantee you, if you ask them, are there some things I do that you have some resistance about or a little, sometimes even resentment? They have them. They're just afraid to tell you. So I say, oh my God, honey, I'm so sorry. I'm happy to change that. You know, there's something I have. I don't know if you'd be comfortable making a shift in this area. If not, that's okay with me, but how would you feel about this? So maybe that's a piece. So your action item is, what do you do to enhance it? What do you do to handle a challenge? And the third one is, if you're going to end the relationship, if you know you should, then make it a must and do it. Don't lie to yourself. And do it in a way that's loving. Figure out your game plan. Create the vacuum. Figure out what you're going to do, what action you'll take. And if you're not quite sure, you know, pick up the time of your life, because we show you how to organize your whole life. And in that process, we'll teach you how to plan your life so you have certainty that you can make your life work the way you want. If you are single, here's your action item now. And this is going to complete our session. What is your map? What are you going to do to get yourself in proximity? What are you going to do? Who are you going to talk to? Who are you going to call and say, I need a marketing team? I need you to be looking for people that meet this criterion for me and nothing less. If they have these elements, don't even put them in my proximity. But if they have these elements, I'm really interested. Who are you going to talk to? Who do you know that probably knows people like this, who have these kinds of qualities? And you got to go out on a warpath of marketing, massive action, get yourself out there, create a plan of what you're going to do tonight and for the next 30 days. And you know, you can't have much of a relationship if you're tired. Therefore, our next session is about how to create that energy so you got the energy to have that passion in your relationship. Because it's really hard to make somebody feel special when you can barely get out of bed. Or when you come home burnt to the core and you don't want to talk, you don't want to communicate or anything else. And so I want to share with you a simple principle that'll help you to massively enhance your energy and to wipe out so much stress out of your body. How do you eliminate all the acids that make you irritated and you don't even realize that's what it is? What do you do so you can unleash the natural energy that's inside of you? Most people, when they talk about getting old, they don't understand what they really are experiencing is the body breaking down from the acids in the system. And on this next tape, we're going to talk about those distinctions. So, I've gone way over the time I was supposed to for this little session. We've sure covered a lot. But you know why? This is where the juice is, my friends. This is where life is lived. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how much respect you have, how many PhDs you got, how many companies you run. If you don't feel connected with someone you love deeply and intimately, then guess what? It's all for naught. So here's a chance. This has been a workshop. You know, several of these tapes have not been very passive, I know, and I've given you a lot to do, and you may have just listened to it and not actually done the exercises. And I understand that. Listen to it again, but this time do the exercises, or go back to them and get that job done, because you deserve to have this kind of clarity. And if you have the clarity, you can make this happen at the level you deserve. Avoid those 4 R's by communicating clearly, but first giving. Know what it is you really want. Know what you don't want. Know what your musts are. Know who you got to be. And every day that you work on yourself and you take the time during that hour of power, or that 30 minutes to thrive, or those 15 minutes of fulfillment, whatever you do, that time for yourself, focus on what you want to create in your relationship. Focus on how much you love yourself. Create that deep relationship with yourself, and maybe finally create that relationship with God. I'm not here to tell you what to believe spiritually, but of all the relationships, that's the most important one. And, you know, for some people say, well, I don't believe in a higher power of any sort. Well, that's kind of like saying that, you know, the Webster's dictionary is the result of an explosion in a print factory. You know, it all just exploded and came together perfectly like it is. I think most people believe in a higher power. And if you do, then ask for some guidance to bring this person to your life, and ask for some guidance for your soul to open up, for your fear to disappear. and ask for that relationship to be expanded. Because if that relationship is expanded, you'll be empowered like nothing else, certainly much more than anything I can do for you or anyone else. So maybe ask God to enter your heart even more deeply. Or whatever your belief is spiritually, maybe just ask to deepen it within yourself, strengthen it. Because with a strong relationship with your Creator and a deep relationship with yourself, you have the foundation of a deep relationship with anyone else. So now choose who you want to be in a relationship with. Don't react. Don't take what's given to you by the environment that you walk by each day. Decide precisely what you want. Decide what it'll take to make that happen, and make that happen. You deserve no less than total happiness and fulfillment. That doesn't mean you won't have challenges, doesn't mean there won't be upsets. It just means that you have enough in common with this person to be related to them long term in a juicy, loving, spiritual, sexy, fun, outrageous way that enhances both your lives and meets the need of all relationships, the purpose of all relationships, and that is to magnify the human experience. I wish you well on this journey. It's an ongoing one. It's always under construction, and I'll tell you what, it makes life an adventure. So God bless you. Make your action plan, and then show up for tomorrow's session, and whatever you do, remember to live with passion. So what's the truth? Where are you really? These first three possibilities are all based on the idea that you're already in a relationship. And if you're in one, I want you to create an action plan now. What are you going to do to take your relationship to the next level? What can you do and what will you do? And I want you to write down 2 or 3 things you've decided today you're going to absolutely do or be or change. Either that decision is, I am no longer going to fly off the handle of the little things. I am going to interrupt my own pattern and say, you know what, you don't deserve this. I'm sorry, I'm overreacting. Or maybe what you're going to do is you're going to create a pattern interrupt. So you both agree, if you start arguing, that if either one of you says, I need a safe space, then the other person has got to listen for 10 minutes and not interrupt. And that doesn't mean 10 minutes where you take notes about all the crap you're going to refute. It means where you really listen from your heart and where you look directly in their eyes the whole time they're talking and you feel what they're saying and you try to put yourself in their perspective. Maybe that's an action item for you. Maybe the action item is you're going to write a beautiful card for no reason today before you go home and drop it off. Maybe you're going to call in the middle of the day and just say, I only have 10 seconds. I'm in the middle of the meeting, but I called to say, I love you. I don't want anything. I just want to tell you I love you. Bye. Click. What will that do? I want you to create an action plan. I want you to write a map, a massive action plan as fast as you can of things you can do to enhance the relationship. Or if you truly are not matched in your natures, in your values, in your goals, you need to get really clear about that, and you need to sit down with this person and make some decisions. You're going to have to decide, because rarely in a relationship will both people want to leave the relationship. What does leaving a relationship bring up for everybody? Absolute fear. Your primary fear. Fear that you're not going to be loved again by somebody else this way. Fear that you'll never find somebody else. Fear that you're going to lose the love. Fear that you're not enough. Fear that you won't be able to have what you really deserve. Or fear this person's leaving you and therefore they're rejecting you and you can't have it. Sometimes this break of this pattern is the greatest thing that ever happened, because now, even if you're on the receiving end, you're now free to really have someone who can fully appreciate you, because it's not that you're not enough. It's that your nature, your needs, your desires, your values are different. And by the way, sometimes people start out with similar goals and similar values and a similar nature, but as time goes by, people go through stages of life. They have significant emotional events, right? They lose family, they lose friends, their priorities radically change. They have a disease, they get older. And at different stages of life, we look at our lives radically different. And if you have a difference in years between you and another person, you may find that this person now has a totally different viewpoint. So, instead of looking as a failure, be honest and decide what you're going to do. And figure out how you do it responsibly, lovingly, where you can preserve the relationship but transform it maybe into a friendship. Because if you think about it truthfully, all relationships have a purpose. There's some lessons for us all to learn. And when you learn those lessons, then the relationship may transform into a new relationship, called a friend or called a business associate or called something. I don't know, someone who's no longer in your life. But you got to decide. Don't turn off this tape without coming up with an action plan to make your relationship better, or to change yourself, or to complete this relationship and create the vacuum and create something new. Because you know what some people do? They go, I know it's the wrong relationship, but I'm going to keep looking until I find the right person, then I'll let go of this person. Well, you can't get to second base with one foot on first. You can't do that. You got to let go. You got to create a vacuum. Until there's a vacuum there that's open, there's no space for someone else to be attracted into your life. Now, that's going to be your plan. That's going to be your homework. You can stop the tape now if you're one of those people. And I'll tell you, the hardest thing in the world for people is to make a decision. But if you and the other person have different goals, different values, different nature, if your lives are so radically different and they are not complementary, remember, different can be complementary. If they're opposite, if they're opposed, then all you've set up is a life in which you have to either constantly be in a battle with someone, or worse, constantly be in repression, where you just accept a life that's less than you deserve. And I don't say this in a flippant manner, like, oh, okay, on this tape I should just change my relationship. No, running from a relationship, as I've said over and over again here, is not the answer. You take you with you. I can't say that enough. But also, denial is equally bad. In some cases, worse, because it destroys your spirit. You've got to tell yourself the truth. And remember, everything in life happens for a reason and a purpose. And if you're listening to this tape, it's either to take a relationship that's great to a brand new level, or it's take a relationship that's not great and change yourself instead of your partner so you know you've done your job. Make yourself better, make yourself stronger, give more, focus on their needs, see how you can enhance and create a spark that brings that relationship to the place it needs to be. Or it's time for you to change a relationship. And you got to be honest. Now, you may say to me, well, end my relationship. That's a pretty big step, isn't it? A life of fulfillment doesn't come from taking small steps, and it certainly doesn't come from taking a step backwards. It doesn't come from settling. It comes from stepping up. And every time a person makes a change in their life, the change is always initiated by a decision. A real decision where you cut off any possibility except the thing you're committed to, because you know in your heart of hearts it's right. It may be scary, but you know it's right. And listen, we've all had to end relationships, or we've been on the other end. We've had someone end one with us, and it's one of the most painful things in life. But the other side of a decision where you commit and you just follow through is the freedom to experience what you deserve. So, many times in life, I've done it, I'm sure you've done it, we've all in relationships, our partners have probably done it with us, where we thought like, well, I'll sacrifice, I'll stay here because for the kids, or I'll stay here for something else. But if you do something that kills your spirit, you're not doing anything for anyone else. So you've got to be true to yourself. You've got to be true to what's real inside. And that's where it all comes from. By the way, why don't we do this? Why don't we take the action? It's all about fear. Fear that we're going to be hurt. Fear that someone we love will not love us anymore at all. They'll take it all away and then we'll be alone. Fear that we may have failed in something. The only real failure is to continue through a process that you know is not fulfilling for you and can't be for someone else. You got to remember, no matter how happy someone seems to be, if your entire heart and soul is not singing with them, they can't be totally fulfilled. But their fear may want them to keep in. Very often, when somebody wants to leave a relationship, it's rarely that both of them want to go. But later on, eventually, people see the benefit for themselves as well. And if you care about somebody, you got to share with them the truth. And again, I'm not saying this is easy by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying it's a must if you're going to be happy. And I'm not saying this as a practitioner who's evaluating this. For years, I had people tell me about their relationships and whether they should end it or not. And I always, I struggled with how to assist them. And the way I helped them was to get them clear about what they really needed in their life and make them really responsible for were they doing their part. And also not to make the decision too quickly, to give it a time period where you really evaluate it and when you share with the other person and you work together. But I also went through this process myself. I got married when I was 24 years old. And I'm really glad I did. It was an amazing time. It shaped me as a man because my wife had been married twice before. It was her third marriage. So as a result, she had 3 children, 1 from one father and 2 from another. So you can imagine the diversity. Picture this. I'm 24 years old and suddenly I have a 17-year-old son. I got an 11-year-old daughter. I got a 5-year-old son. And later on, a son on the way. And, what I'm really proud of is that for 14 years, I raised these kids as my own. They are my loves of my life. If you ask me what I get the most joy of in my life or what I'm most proud of, I'd say seeing my kids and who they become as human beings, as men and women, who contribute to society and who have hearts of gold and make mistakes like anybody, but do such good things for people around them. I love them, I respect them, and I'm really proud that I raised them. But I got to tell you, after 14 years, I found myself in a position where our beliefs and values were very different. What I really wanted for my life and what she wanted for hers was so different. It wasn't that she was a bad person and I was a good person or vice versa. It was just a different world because I didn't have these skills when I was 24. I didn't understand these distinctions back then. And so, am I going to stay in a position like that? Well, yes, I did. For about 4 years, I said, I got to work totally on me. I got to turn this around. I got to find a way to fulfill. And the problem was I still personally didn't feel fulfilled. And I eventually made the decision after the kids grew up and they were adults that it was time to make this decision, and I did. And I got to tell you, it was one of the most important decisions I made in my life and one of the most difficult ones. Today, I'm happily married to my soulmate, a lady who is so aligned with me that, I have a person in my life who not only is beautiful in terms of their love for people. I don't have to explain why I'm doing something, why I'm stopping here, why am I not on time because I'm helping another person. But I'm with somebody who literally I can pitch and catch with. So often in life, you get somebody and they're a great listener. You can give to them, but you don't get very much back. To be in a place with somebody who can challenge you with love, or somebody can come back at you and say, well, what about this? What about that? Is so stimulating. You have somebody you love with your heart and soul, and they love back the same way, emotionally, physically, spiritually, at the same intensity. It's such an amazing thing. So all I want to tell you is if this is a hard decision and you got fear about it, but you know it's right, you got to make it. And the other side is beautiful unless you sit around and ask yourself a lot of questions like, what if I never find the right person again? What if I'm making a mistake? What if, I'm not being fair in this situation? The way you're going to know you're fair is if you find out exactly what your musts are in a relationship. What are theirs? You have the discussions, you work at it. But if you're really different, tell the truth. Now, so often you want to blame the other person. And so often during this time when you make these decisions, you feel enormous pain. The only thing that kept me going is the day that I made the final decision, I made this list. I said, everything I really want in a relationship. What am I committed to in this lifetime to have in my life? What do I deserve and what am I willing to give? And when I went through that list, it became obvious this was not the right relationship based on nature. So I had to decide. And when I'd cry and I'd feel sad and I'd say, God, I get so much juice out of my work and I have so much love for my kids, and I honestly had the fear of losing the love of my kids. What if they don't love me anymore? And those fears started to grab me, and I'd sit back and I'd say, what's my outcome? What am I committed to in this life? What will I not settle for less than? Because I'm willing to pay the price. I'm willing to do whatever it is. And during that time, I got to tell you, there were some amazingly painful times because my children are not my stepkids. They're my children. I adopt them into my life and in my heart. And they're my own in every way. I've raised them. But what was interesting is when the separation first happened, one of my boys, Josh, I felt like he was really, comforting his mom and wasn't spending much time with me. And so one day I called him up and I said, Joshy, I'd like to go for a walk on the beach with you. So Josh came down and we took a walk on the beach, and I said, hey, bud, I'm feeling really sad and lonely right now. And he looked at me and got a little teary-eyed. I said, I want your mom totally supported, but I said, I feel like there's some separation with us. And I said, it scares me, honestly, because I've raised you as my own since you're 5 years old. I may not be your birth father, but I'm your dad and you're my son. And he started to cry, and he said, of course. And he said, I love you, Dad. And I said, tell me something. I said, I feel like my feelings don't matter. Yes, I'm the one that chose to make the divorce happen, but I still have feelings. It still kills me to see anybody hurt. I'm the guy that wants to make everybody happy, and in this situation, I can't. And I said, I just feel this separation with you. And he said, I'm not trying to be separate from you, Dad. He said, I guess I'm probably overcompensating for Mom because you're so strong. I said, I am strong, but I still have feelings. I said, tell me something. I said, wasn't I there for you? Throughout your life, whenever there was a tough situation or anticipating a tough situation, wasn't I there with the ideas or the solutions or the love for you or the comfort or the conversation? And I said, shoot me straight if I wasn't. He said, no, Dad, you always were. And he got really emotional. I said, then how come in my tough time you're not here? It was a pretty direct conversation. And he gave me a hug and he said, I love you, Dad. And he said, I just got to tell you, he said, I don't know. I think maybe you trained us, Dad, that you were the one who always took care of us, so we never even think of taking care of you. Oof. That was a tough moment. Talk about an awakening. He said, it's like you always were there. You're always there with the magic moments. You're always the one to figure the answer. You're Tony Robbins. Who can help you? And I said, I'm still your dad. I'm still a man. I still have feelings. It was a poignant moment, one I'll never forget in my life. Because I thought at times, how come, she didn't do this? How come I always had to do that? You get into that thing of righteousness. And I thought, probably because I trained her to. It wasn't because she didn't love. It's just because she got used to me doing it. So while I say put everything in the relationship and do everything you can to support that person, you also have to give them room to support too. I remember an example from early in my life when I was brand new and I didn't really have any economic success yet. And I'd take someone to lunch or dinner. I'd watch what they ordered, and I'd make sure I didn't order too much so I could afford it, and I'd always pay for the lunch, always pay for the dinner, because I just always want to be the giver. But you know what's interesting? If you're always the one who has to be the giver, you give no room for someone else to give back, and then you feel sad or empty or alone or mad because someone else didn't give to you. It was my fault. And of course, no relationship is black and white. There are many situations that shape something. But I remember one time in that same situation where I took a very wealthy man out to lunch, and I went to grab the check, and he smacked my hand really hard, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, I want to take you to lunch. He said, "Are you going to rob me of the pleasure of paying for this lunch? Are you that selfish?" And I thought, wow, he's so right. I always want to give. Well, you got to give room to let someone else have the joy of giving too. Otherwise, you're going to blame them, and you've been a party to the challenge. And I'll tell you what I learned. It's like I said before, success comes from good judgment. Listen, if you made a decision at 18, 20, 25, and the life that you're living now is so radically different, who you are has grown and changed, don't feel bad about making a decision. Find a way to make that decision better by staying in the relationship, or if it really doesn't work, have the guts to tell the truth and figure out what needs to be done. And learn from the past relationship. Because of this, and my relationship with my wife, Sage, we have the most incredible relationship because, you know what? She catches me and I catch her. I say, no, it's your turn to receive here. Sometimes we have to make a game of it because we're always trying to support the other person because our natures are so alike. Sometimes you can't make a decision because I want to know what she wants and I want to make that decision. She wants to know what I want so she can make that decision. So now we have this deal. You make this big decision, I get the next one. And we always say, whose turn is it? And of course, we usually, being the giving souls we are, try to do something that meets the other person's needs. But how cool to be in a relationship where that nature is there for someone and where I'm now smart enough not to crush it. So to allow yourself to receive is critical for any relationship to work. If this is scary to you, I can only tell you, I have known so many thousands of people that this was the scariest, toughest part of their life, but it was the most rewarding. And I'm one of them. As painful as it was, as difficult as it was, the most important decision in my life, more important than any business decision, any economic decision, any decision in my work. This is it. Where you get to live is with a person you love and who loves you. And if you've got that, there is nothing on earth that can come close to it. But to get that, sometimes you're going to have to make some tough decisions. And if you don't, praise God, you got the right decision the first time. Hang on to it and treasure it as the most precious thing in your life. And if you're not in a relationship yet, praise God again. You got a chance to really set it up the first time with clarity, not just chemistry, but clarity. So you don't just obtain a relationship, not just have one you can make work, but you can have one that grows geometrically because the natures of the two people involved are aligned. Don't get stuck on the institution and forget about the people inside of it. The institution is marriage. The life you live with this person and the happiness you can generate with this person is what matters most. And how do you do it? God only knows. It's the hardest thing to do. But I'll tell you, the one thing to consider is to first get really clear that this is best for you and best for the other person, even though they won't feel like it in the short term. Because if you're in a relationship where you're unfulfilled, I guarantee you're not fulfilling them. They may think so because they don't want to lose it. They don't want the insecurity, the instability, the unknown of not being in a relationship. But neither one of you are being fulfilled. And the way to do it is to be totally honest about your responsibility in it and that you aren't doing all that's there. And then also to say that the natures are different. That it's not that you're not enough. It's not that you're wrong. It's just we're different. And to have this conversation, ideally looking directly in the person's eyes, agreeing that for the next 10 or 15 minutes or hour that you will not break eye contact. Because there's a very powerful tool when you look in someone's eyes and you don't look away. The power of that is amazing because you're going to find yourself wanting to look away, to think of something or access something, or they're going to say something, you're going to remember something else to give a retort or react. But if you'll just stay there and maybe hold their hands and look in their eyes and share, and if someone ever comes to you and wants to end a relationship, do the same thing. Be responsible. Because trying to hang on to somebody who really isn't there with you is the worst feeling in the world. And even if you get them to say yes, it'll just happen again. You can't hold back what a person really needs. And so you got to take the lessons of this relationship and create the space for something new. And if you do, you got something magical. Now, let me tell you the stages people go through first that create challenges in any relationship. Even if your natures are aligned, there are things that can happen that you can get upset about. And then pretty soon, very often, people start to stack things. Like, for example, do you ever notice when you get upset, you can remember everything about that person that upsets you? It's like you stack it all together, and it gets you more and more upset. So the way to avoid that is understand the pattern of destruction that destroys relationships. Because here's what you got to be able to deal with. This is inevitable. Something happens, and even when your natures are aligned, and you feel this inside, this first R, resistance. By the way, I got these 4 R's from 2 relationship experts, from Dr. John Gray and Dr. Barbara DeAngelis, both great relationship experts. And what's happened in each case is they've learned. Part of life is learning. It's not about failure. If you're so afraid to fail, you're going to stay in a relationship where you really aren't connected anymore, where you really don't have the same natures, where neither person is fulfilled, but you're both hanging on because you don't want the economic loss or the emotional loss or the feeling like a failure or what people will think. If you conduct your life trying to avoid these elements, then you lose the love and fulfillment you deserve. All fulfillment in life comes from self-honesty, and once you're honest, taking courageous steps. And courageous steps don't mean you're not fearful. It doesn't mean you don't have pain. It means you do it anyway because you know that in this lifetime you deserve to find that person you can share this life with at the deepest level. And to settle for less than that is to hurt you and to hurt the person you're with, because this person is not being fulfilled either. And neither person will usually have the courage to do something about it until they finally make each other so mad, so upset, that now they can't even be friends. And you want to avoid that because you obviously care about and love this person, or you wouldn't be in a relationship with them. So what are the elements that destroy? The first R, as I started to tell you, that came from them is resistance. Somebody says something, somebody does something that you're in a relationship with, and you go, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. Oh, I wish they wouldn't tell that story again and again. Oh, I hate when she does that. But you don't say anything. And so that goes on. It happens again and again and again and again. And finally, the emotion escalates, doesn't it? It eventually gets, after a period of weeks, months, years, or decades, it eventually gets to the point where you go, I resent this. Why do they always have to do this? And all of a sudden inside, the amount of emotion is not just resistance, but there's some anger there. There's resentment, like, oh, I hate when they do that. Why do they always got to do that? There's a different tone that happens, but you still don't say anything. Now, if you don't deal with this at the level of resistance, it goes to resentment. If you don't deal with it, resentment, it goes to the third R, rejection. And you actually start to, do you have to wear that dress? Do you have to always say that same stupid story? Why did you do that? In fact, this person's going to be looking at you like, why are you so overreacting? What's the deal here? You're going to look like the idiot because you're no longer actually reacting to the moment. You're reacting to all these stacked resistance and resentments. Does that make sense? And so now you literally find things to pick at them a little bit. And they get really irritated. What does that do for them? It makes them have resistance and resentment, and pretty soon, maybe they're rejecting you too, if not overtly, covertly. Maybe with other people, maybe with their friends. They get their girlfriends together or their guys, and they say, you know what she always does? You know my old lady does? You know what he does to me, my old man? And they go through this whole thing, and it gets worse and worse and worse. Eventually, if these people don't break up when they're in this anger state, they'll go to repression. And repression is that fourth R. That's where, like, your roommates. You love them, and they're like a good buddy, but there's no passion. And the reason is it's hard to sustain passion with anger. For most people, when they're angry, it shuts off the emotion of love. And so what happens at this point is you just get repressed. You just go, I love this person. They're really great. My spouse, my friend, my girlfriend, my boyfriend. Yeah, it's really wonderful. But your energy goes someplace else, doesn't it? Where you're more fulfilled in your work, with your girlfriends or your male friends, in sports, in anything that's more fulfilling because your relationship doesn't do it. It just basically is comfort and stability. But comfort and stability is not the same thing as intimacy. And it's certainly not the same thing as fulfillment. So if you're in this example, it's time to step up. It's time to step up, and you know it. So you've got to make a decision. And if you're listening to this tape and you know somebody you care about who's in this place of repression, then you got to help them out. Get them to listen to this. Talk to them. Have an honest conversation. So now 5. This is where you got to get honest. If you're in a relationship, I want you to go through your list, and I want you to rate 0 to 10, where is this person you're in a relationship with you? Meaning, if honesty is the most important thing, are they a 10, absolutely totally honest? Are they a 7, 3/4 honest? Are they a 2? Once in a while they tell you the truth. Where are they really on your musts? And on the things you want to move away from? Where are they there? Are they mostly there? Are they not there? Do they cover any of these? None of these? I want you to be clear. Now, when you do this, you might start to go, wow, that's kind of difficult. This is a little uncomfortable. But you know what? Honesty is the greatest power you have. Now, I'm not talking about coming from ego, because after you've evaluated your current partner, see where you are on your must list, I want you to evaluate yourself and say, how many of these things am I really being that I said I'd have to be? Because it's a two-way street, right? In fact, if you really want to get honest, you'd say, what does my partner want most in a relationship? What are their musts? And am I really delivering? If you really are smart, when you finish this tape today, you'll go ask them to describe to you Or even write it down. What are the musts in their relationship? What do they really want in a relationship with you? And what don't they want? Because while you think you may know, you may not know exactly. The person may not have felt it was a safe place to share it with you. So if you really want to enhance your relatedness, which is what relationship is, you can't relate to someone unless you share what's really true. So first I'd have them share with you. Describe to them what you want to be for them. And then ask them, what are the musts for you? And let them know you're really working because you want to give to them all that they deserve. Don't come from the place of, I made a list and you don't match it. This won't usually develop a great deal of rapport, right? This will end the conversation quickly. So instead, ask them, say, I want to be all I can be for you. I've made a list of what I think you need, but I don't know. Please tell me. And get them to share or get them to write it down. Because this is where you start to have a real breakthrough in your relationship, when you can have that kind of honesty. Most people are so afraid to share because they're afraid they're going to offend the other person, or they're afraid the other person will feel judged and unloved, or that, if we start talking about it, this thing may fall apart. Listen, if your relationship is that weak, you don't have a relationship, and you might as well deal with it now instead of living with a low-grade level of fear all your life. Right? That makes you feel sick inside. Let's just face it right on, and let's figure out how to make it better. Let's figure out how to make it stronger. If the relationship's great, let's take it to another level. If it's fantastic. If it's okay, let's make it great. If it's terrible, let's acknowledge it, and let's change the quality of the relationship, or let's change the relationship. Let's get out, let's make a decision, let's be real. This is a part in a workshop where it gets a little uncomfortable for some people. So here's your exercise. I want you now to go through your list of musts and rate your partner 0 to 10. 10 is they absolutely there, 0 is not at all, only on your musts. And then on the away from list, do they live those some of the time, most time, all the time? Take a good look at that. Then the third step is go to your own list. What do you think on that list of the musts for your partner, and rate yourself 0 to 10 on each of those? Remember we said to close the gap between where you are and where you want to be, you got to first know where you really are. If I have a map and I know where I'm going, I know my target, but I don't know where I am on the map is worthless, and I'm not going to get where I want to go. You must know truthfully where you are. No matter how great it is, it could be better. No matter how bad it is, it could be better. But whatever it is, we got to know. The truth will set you free, so take the time right now to score your relationship and score yourself. But when you score yourself, score it as if your partner was scoring you, not you scoring yourself saying, yeah, baby, I'm the best. Now, if you're not in a relationship, here's what I want you to do. I want you to score yourself alone. Where are you? If you're going to track someone of that caliber, how many of these things are musts on your list, the way you describe yourself? You describe all these things you have to be, but which are the musts to attract the kind of person you want? Asterisk the musts, and then rate yourself 0 to 10. Be really clear. Go for it. Okay, now you know where you really stand. Things may be great, things may be magnificent, but you want more, don't you? That's the nature of human beings. If it's great, you want more of it. You want to expand it. If things are not so good, at least you know that too, and you're being honest with yourself about the role you're playing in it. Because this isn't all about, well, someone else isn't meeting my needs. That's not what relationship's about. Remember, relationship's a place you go to give, not a place you go to get. And if you're giving all that you can possibly give, and you've made the right selection, the person's going to give back to you because it's their nature to do it if you made the right selection. So now, let's take a look at where you really stand. What do you got to do? Well, first of all, if you're in a relationship and the must needs you have are being met, celebrate, for God's sakes. Go acknowledge them. Say, listen, you know what? I made this list. I listened to this silly tape with this guy, Tony Robbins. I made this list of all these things I really want in a relationship, and I circled all my musts. And you know what? I really was honest with myself, and I went through them, and you hit every single one of them. You are so amazing. I am so grateful for you. That'll create a little spark. That kind of sincere acknowledgement will absolutely enhance the relationship. And say, I was making a list of things that I really want to be for you, and I don't know. These are the things I thought would be most important. What's most important to you? Because I want to be more of that. If you're in a relationship, conversely, and you discover, some of the musts are just not there, then the next question you got to ask yourself is, what would you have to do to meet more of this person's needs so they'd want to be that way? So they want to share that way. I don't want you to assume that they'll never do that, because being pessimistic in a relationship never made any relationship better. And running to the next relationship is not the answer. Because the problem is when you leave this relationship and you go to another one, it'll be fine for a while, but when you leave this relationship, you'll take you with you. And in a very short period of time, you'll have some of the same challenges again because the same patterns are there. So first, focus on what you need to do to make it better. Then there's a third option. You may be in a relationship and you may have selected somebody years ago, weeks ago, months ago, but the truth of the matter is your natures are not aligned. It's not that you don't love the person. It's not that you don't care about them. It's just that you constantly bump into the 4 R's. And let me walk you through these, because these are the stages that break down a relationship. Because the promise of this tape was that we said we're going to have you figure out what relationship's really about. What's the purpose of a relationship? And how do you create an extraordinary relationship? How do you deal with the challenges, and how do you nurture and expand it? Well, I think we've covered most of that, but I want to be really clear with the inevitable challenges that show up. If the challenges are consistent and they seem to be overwhelming, there's probably a challenge in that you don't share the same values, or your natures are completely different and not complementary. So if you discover that's true, no matter how long you've been with this person, you got to sit down and be honest with each other and have a great heart-to-heart talk. Now let's take some samples here. And I keep relating to you back and forth what I'm pulling out of this group of engineers and owners and creative people here. So I thought, you know what? Let's put their voices on tape and let them tell you the kind of person they have to be. That way we commit them to it, around the world for as long as they live, since these tapes tend to go into immortality. So would I have a few people here? Why don't you come over here and step up and read to us, who do you have to be to attract the quality of person you want, or attract those qualities of a person you're already in a relationship with? Here's our first person. Her name is Pammy.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad.
This is Pammy. Go ahead. What's your list?
Okay, so here's my list. But most importantly, I always need to come from a place of love, a place of unconditional love for me and for him. I need to be strong, passionate, and caring. I need to nurture my own interests and career in my own right. And I also need to make sure that I put him and our family first. I need to listen, and not just listen, but really hear. Be fun, playful, outrageous, and take care of myself physically. I need to be flirtatious and playful, create moments and surprises. I need to remember and practice my spirituality, and that my belief that nothing real is ever threatened and nothing unreal exists. I need to commit to continue growing, to nurture our friends and each other's families too, to create a wonderful living space and environment that's totally us, that's warm and elegant, a safe haven in our storm, so to speak. I need to schedule consistent time for us to stay in touch with what's most important to him too. I need to make connection much more important than significance, and meet his needs and my own needs, and make sure that my own needs are dependent on meeting his needs too, if that makes sense. I need to be clear about who I am and what's most important to me. I need to hold my vision and optimism for what's truly possible in life, for us, for our kids, for our family and friends, and for the world. I need to live in a place of total gratitude and appreciation for every moment we are blessed to share together.
Very nice. If you do that, you probably attract just about anybody. Okay, that was Pamela. Now, if you listen to her list, she's describing all the ways she needs to be and what she needs to do to create that quality of life. And you know darn well, if she really does that, who wouldn't want to be in a relationship with a person who values themselves and their life and their relationship and their family so much? But also it goes to point out again that if she's in a relationship with someone who really doesn't want kids, or family is not their focus and never will be, it's not their nature, then it's probably not going to be a great team fit. And you got to notice that early on in the relationship, or otherwise you'll be torn up, because you're going to be having this tremendous connection with them, but realizing in order to meet their needs, you have to give up some of yours. Have you ever been in that place before? So this is why it's so important to do this. So let's hear from Scott. Scott actually owns this studio. Scott, step up and tell us, who do you have to become in order to have this kind of person that you desire most in your life?
My list looks a lot like the ideal mates list, except for the short skirt part. But it mainly comes down to boil it down, I have to be honest, creative, funny, offbeat, outside the box, kind, loving, accommodating, flexible, an open communicator, driven by values, intelligent, and nurturing.
Very nice.
Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. All right, let's do a quick recap. We've talked about the most important relationship that has to be solid is the one with yourself. You've got to consistently demonstrate love to yourself. Second, we said the most important element in creating a lasting and fulfilling relationship is in selection. Because no matter what you do to try and change or improve somebody else, if their nature is different than your own, they're not going to want to change and improve into what you think you need. You got to start out with someone who at least has enough things in common. Not just they can do the job, but they will do, because they have goals that are complementary to your own. They have a nature that will be reinforced in your relationship. If you're one of those people that's effusive and rewarding, they love that, not they hate someone who's like that. So that's very, very important. Do you have the same values? Is the team fit there? Then we said in order to know that, you can't wait till you get attracted, because if that happens, you're going to find yourself in relationship after relationship in reaction rather than consciously deciding what you want to bring into your life. And by the way, most of the time, if you have ongoing upsets in a relationship, I don't mean an upset about a particular situation or reaction. I mean ongoing challenges. It's because you didn't make an effective selection. So this is so important. So we said, in order to do that, get clear. What are the exercises we've gone through? 1, describe the mate from heaven. Who is your ultimate desired mate? Number 2, describe your mate from hell so you know what you don't want. Number 3, decide which of these are your musts. I mean, yes, you want them all, but what are the absolute musts for you? The ones you can't live without and the ones you can't live with. 4, describe the kind of person you would have to become in order to attract the person you want or to attract those qualities out of a relationship you're already in. But let's start fresh, as if you weren't in a relationship, so that we can then see what you want to bring to the current relationship, what you want to shape it into, and or, if you're not in a relationship, what you want to attract to your life. Here's how you do it. It's a very simple process, and I've done this literally with hundreds of thousands of people around the world over the last 20 plus years, and I can tell you the stories that people have shared with me are magical, because after people do this exercise, they'll come back and tell me literally, a week later, I found this person. A month later, I found this person. My whole life, I've been saying, I want somebody special in my life that really can last, and I've never been able to find the right person. I did this exercise, and it happened. And the reason is clarity is power. The more clear you are on precisely what it is you want, the easier it is to attract. That's like the example I always give. You buy a certain outfit or car, and boom, you see that car outfit everywhere after you buy it, right? Because the part of your brain is looking for anything that relates to that which you know is most important to you. But if you never stop and figure out what's most important, then you get whatever shows up. And you don't want to fall into that trap. So what are we going to do? What you're going to do in a few moments is you're going to turn the tape off, the CD off, and you're going to do the following. You're going to take out your Get the Edge journal, and you're going to say, whether I'm in a relationship or not, I'm going to describe the ultimate relationship, not based on what I'm willing to settle for, just what do I really want? I want you to describe this person in as much detail as you can. What would they be like emotionally? Like, be a happy person, playful, humorous, fun, passionate, sexy. What would they be like? What would they be like spiritually? Connected to God, walking where they feel connected to other people, seeing God in others. I don't know. What's your description of your ideal person? What are they like physically? Oh, they're hot. Here's how they are. Here's how they move. Here's the smile they have. Here's how they connect with me. They look me in the eyes. I don't know. Describe it in as much detail as possible. They're career-oriented. They're mission-driven. I don't know. Everything you can think of, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, everything about it. Successful, unsuccessful, whatever you want. But when you describe it all, now what happens to a lot of people, they go, I don't know what I want. If I knew what I wanted, I'd already have them. No, with that tone of voice, you'd have a hard time attracting anyone because you don't have the spirit of you alive, because you're not passionate, excited. You're kind of like, oh, well, this is kind of what I want. I want to get you in a passionate place where you're like a little kid and you're making your list for Santa and you know it's going to be delivered on. That kind of optimism, that kind of belief, not the, I'll do this exercise, but I know it doesn't matter. It does matter. Because when you get clear, your brain creates a whole shift. And this brain of yours is like a servo mechanism in a missile. Once it knows exactly what it wants, if the target moves, it'll chase it. It'll find it. But you got to get clear. And most people are clear about what they don't want. Well, I don't want another man who can't commit. I don't want another woman who's going to come back and dump her emotional baggage on me. Every woman I meet's got emotional baggage. How come I can't get a woman with a little small amount of emotional baggage instead of one of those big Jed Clampett moving to Beverly Hills truck full of emotional baggage? These things you're focused on what you don't want do not help you, because then you attract even more to the table. So you got to be clear on what you do want. In fact, here's what I tell some people. Say, well, I don't know what I want. Here's what I tell them. Describe the mate from hell. Write down with all the passion you have, the kind of person you couldn't stand being with. And if you prefer, start out this way. It's easy. You find that people have no difficulty coming up with what they hate because they have lots of references for these things. So what are some of the things you hate? What are the things you can't stand? Well, describe that person. They'd burp all the time in public, or maybe worse. They wouldn't care about you. They'd never come home. They'd stay drunk out all night. They have a big fat beer belly. I don't know. Describe what it is. Their idea exercise is fill the tub, pull the plug, and fight the current. I don't know. Just get somebody. Describe them in every detail. Mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, what you can't stand, career orientation, everything. Because when you're done, you'll have a lot of energy. It's amazing how negativity can create energy. If you're smart, you can then reverse it, because once you're done, you can write the opposite of all that, and you have the mate from heaven. But what I want you to do first, right now, so I want you to describe as much detail as you can, just one thing after another, write as fast as you can, the ideal person you'd want in an intimate relationship. Describe everything about them, take yourself 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then come back, and I'll give you the next secret. Go ahead and do it now. If you're still listening, I'm not going to tell the secret. You have to go do this little exercise. If you're in your car, you can do it in your head. You can still do it. Stop the tape, stop the CD now, and come back to me when you're done. All right, so what did you come up with? First of all, if you really did this, it probably took you more than 5 minutes, didn't it? Because there's so much to think about here that's so important to you in a relationship. And unless you get it down on paper, it's rolling through your head. And what happens when it's in your head is you remember 2 or 3 things and you forget 3 or 4 others. And then you bump into somebody and you meet some of the things you really love, or you feel a physical attraction or a sexual attraction or a love. And then immediately you don't think about, is this the kind of love or attraction that can have a lasting impact because we have enough in alignment? Does this person meet my most important criteria? Now, probably no human's going to meet everything on your list perfectly, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe your list is not that long. Maybe it's possible. But if you have 279 items on your list, it may be difficult to meet all those simultaneously. So the first thing you've got to do is say, which of these are your musts? Because many of these are shoulds, right? I mean, you'd really like them, but they're not have-tos. They're not things you can't live without. So it's very, very important to define which ones are the musts and to be very, very specific here. So I'd like you to just take a quick moment. This will take you no time at all. Stop this program for a moment and just asterisk those items that you can't live without. And in a relationship, if these aren't there, there is no lasting relationship. Take a moment and do that right now and come right back to me. Here we go. Okay, so now you know your must. Now, I don't know what your original list was. Let's go back to my guinea pigs and give you some examples from them. They have things like the qualities they must have as a person with integrity. Somebody who always has integrity. Somebody who has a parallel spiritual path. Doesn't mean that to be identical in their beliefs, but they're moving in a similar direction. Somebody who's attractive and takes pride in themselves, but is not ego-driven by how they look, as this person's example. They said their test is, do they look great in jeans and a sweater? These are the kinds of criteria people have. And then next they have open-hearted. Next one is adventurous, spontaneous. The person said somebody who you could say, let's fly to San Francisco for dinner, and they go, let's do it. Not, do we have to? This is very important for this person. Another person's list were things like a sense of humor, being honorable, being active, someone who takes care of themselves, and I love that. Someone's active in the community, someone who can keep up with me, the person said. Someone who's well-read, someone who's generous, someone who's curious, someone who's open-minded, someone who's upbeat, somebody who's quirky, bohemian-like, somebody who's kind, somebody who gives people the benefit of the doubt, somebody who's strong, somebody who's self-reliant. Another person here has a list that seems to be filled with dichotomies. They want somebody who's totally passionate, loves me and my family, but that's not the most important thing in their life. The most important thing is making a difference in the world as well. They have things like, this person totally respects my independence and wants to be with me every moment. They have this person as someone who's totally outrageous, but is appropriate in their behavior. This is an interesting example of why some people find conflicts within themselves. So when the people made their must list, that's where you started to see a shift. All of a sudden, the last example became somebody who loves people, my family, and life fully. Someone who's playful and passionate. Somebody who's responsible, somebody who's strong, somebody who respects my own strengths, and somebody who really, truly wants to be a dad and give time to being a dad. Boy, that's a really important list, because if the person doesn't want to be a dad for this lady, boy, those goals are not in common, are they? So you have to know this list, because otherwise you're going to be in trouble. Now, does this mean when you sit somebody down, you go, okay, we're on a first date, I have my list. Nope, he wasn't very playful. Nope, tonight she wasn't very well read. I'm out of here. That's why you got to know what your must list is. It's not about screening like crazy in the first second, but it's about knowing your criteria before you become hypnotized by the emotion of attraction or love. Does that make sense? You got to know. Now, let me tell you what else you have to know. That's equally important. I remember doing this years and years ago, and all of a sudden, man, wham, I found the woman of my dreams. It was just the problem is she was also the woman of my nightmares, because I got all the things I wanted, but there were a couple things I didn't want that came with the package. Ever had that experience? Where those things you didn't want outweigh all the good? So in life, you got to know what you want. You also have to be absolutely clear about what you don't want, what would not work in a relationship. So right now, this will be easy. Describe your mate from hell. Write down all the things, all the qualities, descriptions of this person you absolutely would never want to be in a relationship with. And when you're done with a list, asterisk the musts, because there's lots of things you don't want, but you could deal with, get around, learn from, help them, whatever. But I want you to come up with the whole list, make everything you can dream about the worst possible relationship, physically, emotionally, relationship, spiritually, how they connect with people, how they communicate, how they deal with life. And then asterisk the ones that are the absolute must-nevers for you, that if they were there, they would destroy a relationship. It's only a matter of time. You got to know what you got to avoid. Write it down now. Okay, so what did you come up with? By the way, was this kind of fun to do this? Most people, when I have them do this, they start laughing when they're making this list. They start smiling. Some people cry because they go, this is the list of the person I've been with forever. Right? So I don't know where you are, but the list that came out of this group of things like dishonest, self-absorbed, unreliable, no sense of personal pride, superficial, controlling, ungrateful, couch potato, pessimistic, mean, petty, no spine, totally ugly, dishonest, stupid, sloppy. These are some examples from this group of people. But here's the most important thing. You now know what's a must for you in a relationship. What is a must for you to receive and experience on the positive side, and what's a must to avoid. And while this may seem overly simplistic, this clarity can create just huge changes in the way you filter out and attract people to your life. Because when your brain knows what it wants, as I've said so many times, you will begin to notice things you've never noticed before. When you set a goal, that part of your brain, the reticular activating system as it's known, the RAS, starts to seek out what it's looking for. But I'll tell you what's equally important. We said selection is so important. We said having a great relationship with yourself is the utmost of importance. In order to select this person, it's nice to have the list, but the only way you're going to track them is if you do the third step, which is I want you now to describe what kind of person would it take to attract this kind of person to your life, or to attract these qualities out of your current mate. What would you have to be like? It's easy to say, well, you don't score so high on my list, but do you deserve somebody of that nature based on how you're taking care of your mind, your body, your emotion, and your spirit? Are you being giving? Are you being petty? Because you may be actually behaving in a way that's on somebody else's must-never list and not even realizing it because you're caught up with the frustrations of your day-to-day work or challenges or life or past relationships. The worst thing that ever happens when you meet somebody is they start talking about all their past relationships and all the pain and terrible things that have gone on, because as they go back into that history, as they go back into that past, they experience it again in your presence. And pretty soon you start saying, this person is not open to a new relationship. Here's the way to clear it up. Put your focus on who you need to become. And if you focus on that, you'll attract who you want. So I want you to stop the tape one more time. This is a workshop, as I told you. This is not just me entertaining you now. Now it's time when you hear things that make some sense to take action. Because remember, if you're going to get the edge, the way you get the edge is not by learning more. If you let your learning lead to knowledge, you become a fool. Your learning has to lead to action. That's how you get results. That's how you create an extraordinary quality of life. That is the edge. So even though I've had you do a lot on this tape, this is so important. Stop it now. If you're in your car, just think it through. And you can write it down later. Or pull over, for God's sakes. It's your life. It's a relationship. Nothing's more important. You can pull over and let the traffic go by. Come on now, do this. Write down now a paragraph. What kind of person would it take to attract all that you want in a mate? Or to attract those characteristics out of the mate you already have? And if you say nothing, say, well, let's pretend it would. What would you have to be like? Describe the values, the character traits, the way you have to conduct yourself, what you do with your body, to be the kind of person that would deserve the person you just described. Go for it now. Okay. So if there's any lesson from this, it's you need to be the person you want to find. Let me say that again. You need to become the kind of person you want to find. Like attracts like. Water seeks its own level. There's nothing worse than a below-average person trying to attract to the life an above-average human being when it comes to love or commitment or growth. You're just not going to have something like that stay in your life. You might be able to attract them. Again, a lot of times you can obtain what you're after, but you're not going to sustain it unless the two of you are at a similar level. It doesn't mean the other person's right or wrong or you're better or worse. It just means it's different. And so you want to make sure that you meet their needs. Otherwise, any kind of relationship you really want will not stick around in a lasting way. So the question is, how do we make that right selection? If selection's so important, wonderful. Well, obviously, the first thing you got to do is you got to get clear in advance about what you really want before the hypnosis takes over. You know what I'm talking about. You meet somebody and your heart just goes. You don't sit and make a list. I like this, I don't like that. I wonder if it's the right team fit. What if they value this? No! Your body goes, yes! right? Your heart goes, yum, your spirit is alive, you're dancing on the ceiling, right? You don't sit at that time and go, I wonder if our natures will reinforce one another on an ongoing, consistent basis. Let me go back to that tape Mr. Robbins created and see if it makes any sense. You're not going to do that. So the time to do it's in advance, right? Before the hypnosis takes over, before you become sucked in. So you start to get smart, because I hear people all the time say, how come I keep attracting the same kind of idiot into my life? How do I do this? What's the matter with me? What's the matter is you aren't deciding in advance the exact qualities of a person you want. You don't have a strong enough standard, so what's happening is in your desire and need for love, your attraction strategy is being fired off. But listen, we can be attracted to all kinds of people. And you can be attracted to people on the outside who are just extraordinary, but on the inside, they're not your match. So you got to do it up front. So how do you do that? Well, let me walk you through an exercise that you can do right now. Now, again, as I'm saying this, some of you may say, but wait a second, I'm already in a relationship. Yes, but even if you're in a relationship, here's what I want you to do. I want you to first get clear on what is your ideal. What are your ideal musts? Because once you know what they are, you can kind of coach your partner into that direction and vice versa. Also, some of you listening to this tape, I know, have been in a relationship for a period of time that in your gut you know it isn't right, but you're scared. You're scared to fail. You're scared to be alone. You're scared if I end this relationship, then I will have failed again. My marriage or my friendship or my whatever won't happen. But the only great failure in life is to live your life in a relationship where two people really don't share the same values and the same goals and the same direction. Because you deserve in your intimate relationship at least to have someone that shares enough of those in a complementary way that enhances both of you. Remember, the purpose of a relationship is to magnify your human emotions. And if you're in a relationship with someone who has different goals and a different nature and different values, you're going to magnify the negative emotions, aren't you? The conflicting emotions. But if you can find someone that you're aligned with, and again, that doesn't mean you're identical to. There certainly can be differences, but those differences are enough to stimulate rather than to separate. Then you got something that's really magical, and you got to be honest with yourself. I mean, if there's a theme for a fulfilling life, it's self-honesty. Because it's so hard. We're afraid to look the tiger in the eye, but you know what? The tiger, when you look him in the eye, is not that strong. I mean, you can look him in the eye and you'll notice he could back off. You look the tiger in the eye, and once you know what you're facing, the unknown is always scarier. So I'm not suggesting you have to end your relationship. I'm not suggesting you have to create a relationship. I'm suggesting you got to know what it is you really truly want, and out of that list, what are your musts? Because in reality, you won't always get everything you want, at least not right in the beginning. Relationships grow. And besides that, you may not be the prize peach of this person either. You may not be everything on their list. Let's be honest. You rarely attract someone who has everything you want unless you're everything that they really want too. So it always comes down to working on yourself first. Running from a relationship is never the answer, because the problem is you'll take you with you. And pretty soon you'll be happy in the beginning, and all of a sudden you'll have the same challenges all over again within 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months or whatever. So you've got to know, what do they really want? What are their musts? And if you become that for them, if you're both working to become the ultimate person for the other person, meeting their deepest needs in a way that also makes you grow and expand, you're going to be fulfilled because you're growing, you're expanding, you're fulfilling, you're contributing, and you're loved. There's nothing like two people that are growing and developing, and they stimulate each other and challenge each other and love each other into a place that's greater than they've ever been before.